Today, I recently found out that my older sister, who has hated me my entire life, in reality is actually my biological mother, but she has been anything except for motherly towards me my entire life. And she's even gone on to say that she would be happier if I didn't exist. And if I'm being honest, this has really messed me up and totally changed my perspective on my entire life. And at this point, I seriously just don't know what to do about it. Here's what's going on. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk and hit the bell to turn on notifications. Okay, so as the title says, I recently found out that my sister, who has hated me my entire life, is not actually my sister at all, but in reality is my biological mother. And my God, I never had any idea before. She was always hateful towards me, but I kind of just assumed that my arrival had changed a bunch within the family, and maybe there was just less money for her to go to college or something like that. Because when I was born, she literally just took it all out on me. When I was 7 or 8, my parents, who were actually my biological grandparents, had to end their relationship with her because she was so hateful towards me. She called me names every single time she saw me, and she was aggressive towards me. Like if I sat too close to her, she would tell me to get away from her, or she would straight up push me. She would even tell me to leave the family because nobody wanted me and that I was a disgusting freak. She also tried to convince my other siblings, who were actually my aunts and uncles, to lock me out of the house if my parents weren't home and to let me run away. They eventually told our parents, and when they confronted my sister, she told them that life would be so much better if I ran away and got hit by a car in the process. So eventually, that was it for them when it came to her. But here's the thing, even without direct contact, I was aware of how hateful she still was about me. I heard adults in the family discuss it, I heard my siblings talk about it, but nobody ever brought up the fact that I was her biological kid. When my sister found out that I found out, she straight up told me that she hated me and I never deserved to exist. She said she wanted to see me broken and mangled, and that if I ever called her my mom or mother, she would find some way to end me. She said she was repulsed even looking at me, and that she owed me nothing, and that she was not here to answer any of my questions. In fact, she said I should do everybody a favor and no longer exist, if you know what I mean. And when my parents found out about this, they straight up went nuts. Now, I've got to be honest, this has really shaken me to my core, because I suspect something bad happened to my sister, and that's why I exist. But I literally have no way to really know. Like, my parents don't even know. They'd always planned on telling me, but the way my sister was treating me just gave them pause. I think they worried it would be super damaging to feel so hated by the person who gave birth to me, especially when we don't know for sure that something bad happened or not, or if she maybe just hates my biological father. The whole thing has also made my relationship with some of my extended family incredibly weird. I still call my parents and my siblings, which some of them find kind of weird, but I also just have so many weird feelings about my sister, who's actually my biological mother. I don't know how to feel about her, but I'm also afraid to say that she's my biological mother when speaking, or even just in this post. Like, I prefer to say sister because that feels safer. Honestly, I'm feeling kind of lost, and I'm not sure if my relationships should change or not, or if I should be angry with my close family for not telling me, because I'm not angry with them. In all honesty, I think it's just kind of messed me up knowing how much my biological mother hates me, and if I found out as a kid, I know that would have been way worse. What should I do? I have never heard of a situation like this. I'm not even kidding. This is crazy. Your biological mom, who is definitely not your mom, in my opinion, is a terrible person. Sure, she gave birth to you, probably because of like a one-night stand that she probably regrets, but she is by no means a motherly person. She literally holds so much disgust and disdain for you, it's just not even fair. You didn't ask for any of this. Like, what the heck is going on right now? Like, dude, imagine saying that to someone that you literally gave birth to, where you're like, wow, I wish you didn't exist. And like straight up telling them to just end it all. Like, holy crap, I cannot imagine treating someone like that under any circumstance. Because the original poster doesn't deserve this, like, not at all. And also, like, if I was in this situation, I wouldn't blame my parents. I would be like, okay, I understand why you didn't tell me this as a kid. Because how can you tell a kid that? There's no way of explaining that. Like, you're just not mature enough to understand what's actually happening. If anything, they kept it from you because they were trying to protect you, which completely makes sense, by the way. It totally is understandable that they wanted to protect you and make sure you were good. So dude, I really hope you're able to find some kind of solace in this and even like seek out professional help. This sounds like a really sketchy situation, and I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. Be sure to subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already, but also please check out Am I the Genius. They'll be linked down below in the description, and for the record, we love Am I the Genius. They're like that one cousin that comes over with like super soakers, and you know for a fact you're gonna have a good time, and it's always just a blast to be around them. Like seriously, they give off those vibes and then some, so please subscribe subscribe to them. Also, if you want to submit your own stories, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit. It's the best and only place on the internet you can find where you can submit your own stories and get your experiences out to the world. And trust me, we go through a lot of different types of stories. Some are sad and like mournful, but a lot of them are hilarious. In fact, this user recently pointed out that, yeah, we couldn't really read through one of the stories without laughing just a little bit. And I feel that, bro. Like, dude, seriously, some of these stories are hilarious. Either because of like the absurdity or because of like the situation the original poster's in. Like, my God, there's a lot of crazy stories that have come through this channel, and trust me, there's a lot more where that came from. But without further delay, let's get back to the video and get on to the next story. My wife went behind my back and agreed to go on a family vacation with all of the kids, regardless of how I felt. And despite the fact that this is a place we agreed together that we didn't want to go to again, she essentially made this decision for me without really giving me a chance to have any kind of input. And at this point, I'm pissed off, I'm very frustrated, and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, so for years, my wife, our two kids, and I went to the same beach town for a week with part of my wife's family, namely her brother, her sister-in-law, their kids, and her mom. We originally did this because another sibling's family lived there, so it was like a chance for all the cousins to be together. But the issue is that the trip became extremely repetitive and rigid. We went to the same beach on the same street, basically had the same schedule, and we ate at the same restaurants and had the same meals every single day. Like, there was very little flexibility. My wife's family is very routine driven and frugal. And sure, my family's structured too, but on vacation, we like variety, activities, and maybe just a little bit of flexibility. When the other siblings' family still lived there was a little bit more balance. But once they stopped going, it just became us, and it was like this really routine-driven thing that just really was not enjoyable. And let me tell you something, the last couple of years were miserable. The houses got smaller while the kids got bigger. The routine became more rigid, and our kids were bored and just stir-crazy. And I ended up trying to like take them out to do things just to break up the week. That eventually caused some tension because I was going outside the plan, as they would put it. And my wife was also stressed and admitted afterwards that the trip was no longer enjoyable. After the last trip, my wife and I had a long conversation and agreed we do not want to have the same vacation again. We talked about trying something different, maybe like the mountains or going to a lake, maybe trying a different beach, like really just anything else. Recently, my wife handed me her phone and asked which vacation house was nicer, and it was the same beach on the same street and basically the exact same trip again. And I was really angry because I thought we'd already agreed this was done. But her explanation was that her mom said this location is sentimental to her and that she wanted all the grandkids together there. Well, her brother's family agreed immediately, and my wife says it was this or nothing. So she chose this because getting grandma and the grandkids together was so important to her. She's basically already fully committed herself and our kids to going for a full week, and she assumed that I would eventually just agree and go as well. Now, my issue is that I feel like her mom and brother made the decision, my wife accepted it, and I was informed like after the fact. So I told her honestly, like I felt betrayed and isolated because we'd already agreed as a couple not to repeat this trip. She keeps circling back to, oh, this is important to me, why won't you just do it for me? And honestly, we've been fighting for a solid week about it, so I offered a compromise. I said that because it's so important to her, I'd come for the last 2 nights. She has committed herself and the kids for the full week, and now she says that since she knows I don't want to be there, I've completely ruined it, and asked me why I have to act like this. She's also brought it up around the kids, so now they know there's a conflict. I'm not trying to stop the kids from seeing their grandmother, it's not like that. Plus, I'm not even saying no to them going. Instead, I'm saying no to like spending a full week of my vacation time repeating the exact same trip we already agreed was bad for our family. So am I really the jerk here? Like, am I the enemy in this situation? Because I don't know what to do. Okay, if I was in this scenario, I'd be pretty pissed off. Because, dude, okay, if you've never dealt with, like, in-laws or anybody in, like, the extended family where it's like, oh my God, we're doing this again. We're really going back to this same place with these same people, doing the same activities over and over again. Bro, I gotta tell you, I've been in that scenario and it gets old really fast. Like, I'm serious. Even one trip doing that would have been more than enough for me to be like, okay, I am never coming back here again. This is not worth my time or my energy. Like, seriously, I would hate everything about that and not want to be a part of it. So I'm like fully on the original poster side. This just sounds annoying and I would really not want to deal with this. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. This sounds stupid and honestly, I don't blame you for not wanting to be there the entire time. My father gave me about $80,000 as a wedding gift, all while doing it in secret, because he desperately wanted to keep that information away from my stepmother, who hates me with all of her guts. But after she found out, suddenly I became the target of her animosity, putting me in a situation where I was forced to fire back and clap back at her in a way that she definitely didn't expect. And now I'm kind of wondering if I'm the jerk here. Here's what's happening. Okay, so I just got married about 2 weeks ago. I'm a 29-year-old female, and about a month before the wedding, my dad messaged me and said he would give me his wedding gift in advance through a bank transfer. He sent me about $80,000 and asked me not to tell my stepmother. Now, for context, my parents separated when I was around like 6 years old, I think. My mom caught my dad cheating, and they separated, although they are still legally married. Well, to put it bluntly, my stepmother has always disliked me because she feels like my existence makes her look like the other woman, and it makes her children look illegitimate. She also doesn't like it when my dad gives me money, so my dad and I just kept the transfer private. Well, here's where the real problem started. Apparently, my dad and stepmother had agreed that they would only give me like maybe $10,000 during the money dance of the wedding, and just so you're aware, it was supposed to be $20,000, but my stepmother objected, so it became $10,000. They gave that amount publicly, and I acted normal because I'd already received my dad's gift in advance. But the problem is that my aunt on my dad's side knew that he already had sent me money. So after the money dance, she told my stepmother exactly what happened. And then for the rest of the wedding, my stepmother looked upset, and I heard that she almost caused a scene. The day after the wedding, before my husband and I even had time to breathe or like open any gifts, my stepmother called me up. She accused me of being greedy and taking advantage of my dad. She said, "Oh, you asked for way too much money," saying that their youngest child is still studying and that they could use it. She also said my dad is close to retirement and that I'm taking advantage of his savings. She brought up other things that were completely not true, including saying that she raised me and treated me like her own child, and that is just categorically false. She also acted like I should be grateful that she accepted me, even though I'm my dad's child from his marriage and not an affair. Now, throughout all of this, I just kind of let her talk because I really expected this reaction, because trust me, I've heard versions of this before several times. But when she finished, I finally snapped. I said to her, "You have so much to say, but you've been the other woman taking from my dad for 25 years. And then right after that, I ended the call. But now my siblings, her relatives, and even my dad have been calling and messaging me, but I have not opened or answered anything yet. I know that what I said was harsh, but I don't feel like I owe her anything after how she spoke to me. She played a part in ruining our family, and yet my mom still forgave her, and I still tried to respect her over the years. But this was really like the first time I talked back to her because she just disrespected me first. So am I the jerk here? Because I really just don't know what to do anymore. Okay, dude, your stepmom sounds like a nightmare. First off, for her to be like, "Wow, I hate you. You're the person that's making my life miserable." Like, dude, you didn't do anything. You're just existing and like living your life. And also, you were just a kid when all this crap went down. For her to treat you like garbage for your entire life after that, all under this guise of like, "Oh, it's your fault things are bad." Like, no, dude, you didn't do anything. You're just a kid. Of course it's not your fault. She's an idiot. But my God, the fact that he had to hide this transaction from this lady is proof enough that you are not the problem. She is. She just can't accept the fact that you exist and you want love from your dad. Plus, you want support from your dad in the form of like, oh, I don't know, maybe money when you have like a major milestone. Which, yeah, by the way, that's like a huge blessing. Not everybody gets that. And not everybody has a dad who actually cares. Like, your circumstance could be so much worse. Like, why is she so resistant to you, like, I don't know, getting any kind of attention? All she sees is dollar signs and says, well, all that money could have gone to my children. And it's like, dude, money can still go to your kids. Like, I'm getting married. Like, what do you want, dude? So no, you're not the jerk, man. I wouldn't have told her anything. In fact, I'm kind of surprised you're still talking to her. And it's so funny to me because it's always the most toxic person in the family that everybody goes to bat for. And they're only doing that because they don't want to get yelled at. They don't want the stepmother in this situation turning the knife against them. So they're like, wow, you need to be nicer to them. They're doing their best. And yet they'll still never acknowledge how crappy this person has been over the years. They just excuse this behavior away and act like, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to get targeted next. And that's super unfair for the original poster. They didn't do anything wrong, and yet no one is supporting them and telling this lady, hey, get lost. So no, bro, you definitely should have talked back to her. She deserved to get shut down and put in her place. Like, seriously, if you're gonna dish it, you better be ready to take it. And if you can't take it, don't go screaming to other relatives and expect any kind of support. Because if anything, for this original poster, this is like a fantastic litmus test of seeing like, oh yeah, these are the people that really do not have my back. Because your stepmom has no say over what money you should or shouldn't get from your dad. And I find it so weird that she's policing that and just acting weird in general. Today at my job, I realized that the children who come into my store are way nicer than any of the fully grown adults who come in all the time. And honestly, I find this to be a very shocking revelation, and it's something I'm still trying to come to grips with. Here's basically a breakdown of what's happening. Okay, so where I work, customers are either old people in their 60s or they're young children. And no, there's never any in between. I want to say that maybe 99% of the time, the children are way nicer and more understanding than adults. In fact, just yesterday, there was a little kid with her granddad. And when I went to put her milkshake down, a bit of it dropped and kind of like spilled down the sides of it. It didn't go everywhere, just like a few drops on the table. I apologized a bunch and I went to go get some napkins because I've been yelled at for stuff like that before. Well, the old guy was like, "Oh, it's okay, love, just clean it up. It didn't make a huge mess." When I came back and wiped it up, I apologized again, and the little kid looks at me and goes, "There's no need to say sorry. People make mistakes, it's okay. You didn't do it on purpose. Thank you." And honestly, when I heard this, I had to try not to cry because it was the start of my shift at 9 in the morning. I then thanked her and I said how sweet she was. And I told her granddad that she had better manners and was kinder than like 90% of the adults that I served. And you know what? He seemed kind of shocked by that. Like, how on earth can a freaking 8-year-old be more understanding and have better emotional regulation skills than a fully grown adult? Like, seriously, how? And it's happened before where kids will say, "May I please have," or "thank you," and adults won't even look up from their phones and just say random drinks and foods at me. And it's like, what? And sure, sometimes kids can be a bit crappy. Like one time I had a bunch of 12-year-old boys call me so many different names for not giving them free food. But like percentage-wise, the adults are way worse. They'll start yelling at you in the middle of a rush, complaining about the stupidest things humanly possible, and then not even acknowledging you. So I don't know, this is more of like something I've noticed and experienced, but honestly, I'd love to hear other people's opinions on this. Okay, dude, I've got to completely agree with the original poster here. I've worked a lot in food service, especially, and also like in customer service in some way, where you're in like a customer like facing position where you have to deal with them all the time. And let me tell you something, kids are always nicer than adults. For me, it breaks down like this. I can usually spot if a crappy person's walking in the store or not, pretty much based on the way they talk to the person at the front door. If they're at least neutral or like even mildly approachable, I can think to myself, okay, they're probably going to be fine. But if they charge in there, they don't even look at this person, or they catch an attitude and they're like, "Wow, what do you want?" When it's like, dude, I'm just greeting you into this giant box store. Please do not already have an attitude with me. Like if I see anything besides neutral or at least like even slightly nice, I know for a fact they're going to be a nightmare. But I never see that out of kids. The only time I see that out of kids is if the adults are just completely neglectful. They let the kids run all over the place. The kids basically run the house and that dynamic. But honestly, when I was in a more customer-facing position, I would see way more adults that were acting like idiots than any kind of like kids being morons. But what about you? If you've worked in like customer service and you've worked with like a lot of different types of people and like adults and children or whatever, who's worse, adults or children when you're dealing with them? Leave a comment down below. I would seriously love to hear what you have to say. Am I the jerk for getting mad at my parents after they forced me to cancel my summer plans? Because honestly, the reasons they gave me are really stupid. Plus, I'm only going to see my friends for a little bit before I move to a new country. And at this point, I just don't know what else to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so it is quite literally the summer after high school. And after my graduation ball, I fully intend on going out and having fun one last time before my friends and I were to be separated by college. And since my entire family is moving to a new country, namely the United Kingdom in August, I really just wanted to spend one last summer with everybody. For a bit of context, my parents aren't usually strict or unfair. Like they simply expect me to inform them of plans beforehand and have those plans be approved by them, which is exactly what I did. I sat them down and explained my entire July itinerary, which by the way, I double checked with them just to ensure that I had their explicit permission. Well, today, my mom barges in and asks me, "Hey, when are you going to hang out with your friends?" And I think it's a weird question, but I remind her that I'd already told her everything. She then acts completely oblivious, which should have been my first sign that things are about to go downhill. She then asks me how attached I am to these plans, and I say I'm very attached because why else would I want to make plans in the first place? She then cut to the chase and said, "Well, you need to cancel them. We're all going to be apartment hunting next week, so we will be flying out for 2 weeks." And I think to myself, what? When I express my confusion, she elaborates that she needed an excuse to not socialize with her friends, because for some reason my parents despise socializing and thought that leaving the country was easier than declining a dinner invitation. So I remind her that I told her about my plans a month in advance and that I was meeting childhood friends for the first time in a decade, and this was all just really unfair for me. I'm going to be living on my own soon in college. I really should have a say in this. Well, naturally, my dad decides decides to have a screaming fit about how family is sticking together and how I was being selfish for wanting to spend time with my friends over my family. And also not to forget that I'm ungrateful because I was willing to waste money on flight tickets I didn't even know were being booked until right now. If I was the bigger person, I would be mature and sit down and have a level-headed discussion with them. But hey, since I'm not the bigger person, I threw the biggest tantrum I've ever had since maybe the age of 3. I'm talking tears, screaming, throwing a fruit salad onto the floor. It was immature and probably an overreaction, but the rage bait kind of got to me. So now, after running to my room and slamming the door shut, I'm typing this up and posting it online. My parents expect an apology, which I find ridiculous because they should be apologizing to me first. And of course, my mom is loudly calling her sisters, telling them about her ridiculous, overdramatic, spoiled daughter, knowing full well that I can hear her bullcrap because she is literally right outside the door. So am I the jerk here? Because I really just don't know what to do. Oh man, your parents suck. They clearly don't care about your friendships or anything like that. Like, I know for a fact if I was in your shoes, I'd be very pissed off. I would be unforgivably pissed off. Like, I really don't think I would ever let this go. It would be on my mind probably constantly, and I don't think I would ever let this go because, dude, what do you mean I gotta cancel my plans because you don't want to be social? That seems really stupid and very unfair. So yeah, you have every right to be pissed off. I would probably throw a fit as well, especially if I'm moving away, like to another country. Like, bro, at least give me a chance to say goodbye to my friends. So yeah, your parents suck and this is completely unacceptable. An entitled Karen goes into a fit of rage after I hang up on her for being aggressive and toxic towards me over the phone. But as a result, this entitled Karen came to my store directly so that she could confront me and try to get me fired. And I've honestly never met anybody more insane in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I used to work in the cosmetics department for a very popular brand. We were always busy and some days were non-stop. So this particular day was during the holidays, and I remember being behind the register with a crazy long line, along with other clients waiting to be helped, as well as other appointments waiting to arrive. This entitled Karen calls on the phone and is asking about a product from a different counter. Well, I tell her that I don't work for that brand, but I can transfer her over. She then goes, "No, I don't want to be transferred. You can walk over there yourself and tell me if they have this product." I then tell her that every department is separate and that the person there will assist her with this. She just completely disregards everything I said and repeats that I need to personally go over there and check myself. I also tell her that it's completely slammed at my counter and I couldn't even leave if I wanted to because I have clients waiting in front of me. I'm still at this point being patient and professional, even though this Karen was really pushing it. She then starts getting stern, like she's talking to a child or her own personal employee, and tells me something along the lines of, "I am telling you right now to go over there yourself and tell me what it is because that's what good customer service is." Well, at this point, I'm getting really pissed off because in the time I've wasted talking to her, she could have been transferred and already knew if they had what she wanted. And also, she's definitely not going to talk down to me as if I'm beneath her. It's clear she wanted to be demanding and unreasonable, and when I see that's the intention, I'm not going to play their power games. I tell her, "Okay, ma'am, I'm transferring you now." She then starts demanding to know my name, but I tell her I'm not going to give it to her. So I transfer her, I hang up the phone, and I try to assist as many clients at the same time as I can because there are even more people waiting now. About 20 minutes later, I'm behind the register with a never-ending line of people, and right then and there, I see this one annoyed-looking lady who resembles the leprechaun from those horror movies come stalking over to my department, and I can definitely tell that she's looking for trouble. Don't ask me how I knew, but I had a gut feeling it was the entitled Karen from the phone earlier, and boy was I definitely right. She eventually comes up to the counter, but not to where she is with the people waiting for help. She comes to the side of the counter like you would if you wanted to ask a quick question. I kid you not, she turns her head to listen to each of the workers behind the counter as we are speaking to customers, just so she can figure out who it was that she spoke to on the phone by our voices. And at this point, I knew for a fact it was her, and I was in disbelief and honestly amused that this lady, who was too important to wait for a call to be transferred to the correct department, somehow had enough time to physically come to the counter to confront me. I'm watching her from the corner of my eye, but I don't acknowledge her. By now, my coworkers have noticed this woman and her weird behavior, and I tell them that I'm pretty sure it's the crazy Karen who called earlier. Now, at this point, Leprechaun Lady isn't saying anything, just eyeballing us and leaning in to hear us talk. Eventually, she points to me and goes, "It was you." But I look at her with such disinterest and I just say, "Excuse me?" She then says that I'm the one who wouldn't help her on the phone earlier, and she wants my name, the number to corporate, and to speak to a manager. Mind you, we are still slammed with customers, and everyone is looking at her making a scene. Well, I just kept my cool because that was making her her even more angry that I was being so nonchalant. So I tell her now that she's here, she can go check the counter herself for her product. I also let her know that I'm still not giving her my name because her behavior makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable, and that if she doesn't get away from me, I'm calling security. And by now, she has pretty much everyone in the vicinity looking at her crazy. And I guess she decided not to push her luck because she finally left in a huff. This Karen clearly had too much time on her hands and wanted to use it to go cause problems. And I can only imagine the issues that she causes everywhere else that she goes. Wow, you either have to be like super bored or incredibly petty to show up to a store after talking to someone like that on the phone. Like seriously, if she had just been transferred, she could have figured this out right away. But instead she's like, no, I want you to do it. You need to be my personal slave right away. Like that is so crazy to me and I will never understand that. It's also incredibly creepy that she was trying to listen to everybody talk just to figure out who it was that hung up on her. Like seriously, this is that important to this lady. She had to go out of her way to figure out who it was just to try and like teach him a lesson. Like what are you doing with your life? Seriously, that is so insane to me. So good for the original poster for not giving out their name or even giving this lady the time of day, because people like this truly are obnoxious to deal with, and I love the fact that this Karen got shut down almost immediately. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that she isn't invited to my brother's wedding, all because she was extremely rude to his fiance? Because right now she is in complete denial, and at this point I don't know if I made a mistake or not, and I really now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my brother, who we will call Connor, and his fiance, who we will call Christine, are getting married in early 2025. They got engaged a few months ago and have recently sent out wedding invitations, and my mom is upset because she wasn't invited. For some background info, we met Christine after she and Connor had been dating for about 8 months, and that was a few years ago. Basically, my mom just didn't like her. After we met her, she'd constantly complain and criticize Christine, and this would range from her looks all the way to her job. And for reference, Christine is a waitress, and my mom would say stuff like, oh, she just isn't good enough for my son. And honestly, I don't get any of it. Christine and I are friends. She is such a sweet person who wouldn't hurt a fly. Whenever Christine and Connor came over for dinner or an event, she wouldn't say anything to Christine, but she tried to get Connor to always spend time with her instead of Christine. She always tried to one-up Christine as well. If she called Connor and he mentioned that Christine made dinner, her dinner was suddenly just always better. If Christine had a gift for Connor, my mother always tried to say how her gift was better than hers. Thankfully, my brother is not stupid and realized all of this. And to avoid starting family drama, he didn't condemn her loudly in front of everybody, but would always defend Christine if he heard her talking any kind of garbage. He made it very clear that if she kept talking badly about Christine all the time, he would go extremely low contact. And that made her stop for a while, but since they announced their engagement, she is back to it again. Maybe she forgot, I don't really know, but I do think it's because Connor is her son, and I know that some mothers can be very clingy with their sons. I have a boyfriend, and I've never heard her say a bad word about him, so I do really think it's because Connor is her son and I am her daughter. I was at my mom's house yesterday, and my mom complained that she wasn't invited. She said Christine was stealing Connor away from her, so I told her that Connor getting married didn't necessarily mean Christine was stealing him. Then I asked her what exactly she didn't like about Christine, but it all really led back to the same thing. She would say that she's stealing her son away from her. I told her that while she can't control how she feels, she can control her actions, and that talking about Christine like that was the reason that she wasn't invited. I tried to say it gently, but she did not take it well at all. She tried to make excuses and say that it was fine, and that it's just her venting to her family and friends, and that I was being inconsiderate of her feelings. Now, I know how she feels about it, but I think those feelings aren't really an excuse for talking garbage behind someone's back like that. Not to mention going out of your way to make it clear that you dislike them. And I know I'm not the only person in the family who would argue with me. I ended up telling Connor about it, and he said I was right, and that she needed a reality check. But it's all been weighing on my mind. I just can't stop thinking about it. So am I the jerk for telling the truth to my mom? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk, because I think you gave her the nice version of how this really was gonna go down, and I think the fact that she just doesn't understand what she did wrong, in my opinion, is a massive red flag. Like, it really seems like she's in complete denial, and she cannot accept the fact that yes, she definitely is the problem. I mean, just look at the way she's treating Christine. She's literally acting like, oh yeah, you're not good enough for my son. That is such a toxic way of acting, not to mention the fact that the mom's like, oh, you're stealing my son away from me. That is such a weird weird thing to say because you are not married to your son. Your son is getting married to Christine. Like, that is such a strange thing to insinuate. And if she was doing this right, it wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you're stealing him away from me. But instead, you should be saying, oh, I'm so happy for you. You found someone that you actually care about and you can now move forward with your life. Like, does the mom in this story really want her son to stay single forever? Like, that just doesn't make any sense, and honestly, it kind of gives good reason as to why she wasn't invited to the wedding in the first place. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for dropping this news, because I'm sure that Connor or Christine would have said it a lot harsher. And I think if anything, she got the nice version instead of getting scolded and humiliated. An entitled Karen tries to sneak her friend into the gym that I work at, all without showing any kind of proper membership. Here's what happened. So this happened this morning when I picked up a shift at another location at the gym that I work at. Keep in mind, this is the first time I worked at this location, and I did just start with the company 3 weeks ago. I opened the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning, and at around 7 o'clock in the morning, this man and woman came in to work out, and this woman, let's call her Jackie, that's not her real name, scanned her QR code, but her friend did not. We offer buddy passes at a cost, and my screen told me that she did not have any buddy passes, and I did not see her friend scan a QR code. I had asked Jackie if her friend was a member and had a QR code, and she has said that it's okay because he's my buddy, but unfortunately, I sadly had to inform her that she didn't have any buddy passes, and I asked her friend if he ever had our guest pass, which was a one-time free thing for locals. Well, he said that he did before, so that automatically disqualified him for a free guest pass. I bring up that the buddy passes are $20, and she can bring in one person every time that she comes in, and so I ask if she wants to do that, but she just declines the offer. I informed Jackie that since she doesn't have any buddy passes on her account, and because her friend in the past has already used a free guest pass, and that she doesn't want to buy a buddy pass, then unfortunately I would have to refuse his entry. Now, I'm the type of person that has a hard time with confrontation, and I'm a very anxious person, but I am working on my confidence with confrontation and potential issues that may arise. She said that he is always allowed in and that everybody just lets him by. I then try to think on my toes to come up with a resolution, and I tell her to hold on and let me speak to someone whom at the time I thought he was in my position but one step above the ladder, but later found out that I was wrong. So I asked him if people let him in all the time, and he just said it's not his jurisdiction and that we do offer 3-day guest pass for about $25. And I thought to myself, oh, I forgot about that. I replied by saying, okay, I'll go ahead and offer it to her then. I went ahead and I offered it to her, and she said that her friend won't be over here much longer, which implies that he was from out of state. She decided to be a jerk and say, oh, you must be new here. And I was flabbergasted that she even decided to make that comment. I did tell her, yes, I was new here and it was my 3rd week, but at the same time, unfortunately, since you don't have a buddy and he doesn't want to pay for a guest pass, unfortunately, he is not able to work out today. And I then apologized for the inconvenience. She was going to say more, but her friend stopped her and said that it's okay and that he can go for a walk and that he'll be back later when she's done. And thankfully, right then and there, the whole debacle ended. And I will say at the end of the day, I thankfully missed her exit out of the gym. I then asked the manager at that location when he showed up at about 9 o'clock, and he didn't even know who Jackie was off the bat. He then said that sometimes people will just sneak people in when others are busy or not looking at the members checking in. But I seriously need to know, am I in the wrong or am I the jerk for not letting this lady bring her friend into the gym? Because right now, I'm really not sure if this was the right move to make. No, you're definitely not the jerk here. Jackie knew exactly what she was doing, and she just didn't want to pay the $20 for her friend to work out. Because that's all that was happening here, all because Jackie was being incredibly cheap. Am I the jerk for not paying for a painting that I asked my friend to do after waiting not only 6 years for her to do it, but also with her demanding that I pay way more than I ever agreed to? Because right now, I am very frustrated, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my friend, who we will call Jordan, is a wonderful artist. I love her work, so I told her that if she ever considered doing commission pieces, I wanted to be her first customer. She said okay, and I sent her a picture of my dad who passed away as a reference, and I wanted to give this painting to my mom as a gift. Now, this was back in early 2018. Jordan said that she would start on it when she could, but that she was busy, and I really just thought that she did not want to do any commission work yet, so I just kind of left it at that. Well, a few weeks ago after our conversation, Jordan posted on social media that she was open to do commission pieces and posted about how she would charge for those pieces. I messaged her again, and she said that she got my order and was starting the piece for me. Now, per her post, I assumed the piece would be around $200. She also said that she was charging her clients around that much, so I should expect to pay about the same. And she said that she didn't want me to pay until after she was done, so I didn't. Now fast forward, and for the last 6 years, she would post the other commission pieces that she had done. When I asked about mine, she would say that she's working on it, but that she hasn't had the time to finish it up, and she often lost her job and was looking for a new place to stay, among other things. I understood that times could be hard, so I just waited. The reason I didn't just stop asking her was because sometimes she would send me Snapchats that showed sneak peeks of the painting, so I knew she was working on it little by little. Well, flash forward to last weekend, and she finally gave it to me. It is a beautiful painting of my dad, and I cried looking at it. But then she dropped the news on me that it was going to be $700, and I was not prepared to pay that much. I told her that when she started doing commissions, she was charging her clients about $200 to $300, but she responded by saying that she realized that her work was worth more, and also the cost of supplies had gone up since then, plus the amount of time spent working on it. I thought it was unfair to charge me so much, given that I had waited years for this painting. Also, within the last 6 years, I had gotten married, I had bought a house, and I now have 2 children of my own. I don't just have $700 to spare on this painting. She told me that it isn't her fault that I can't afford it, and refused to give it to me until I could pay her. So I told her to just keep it, since I didn't have the money for it in the first place. Well, she called me a jerk for wasting her time on this and then left. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk. The fact that you waited 6 years for this painting and then she tries to hike up the price is absolutely insane to me. There's no good excuse for that. If she had time to do commission pieces for other people, especially in 6 years' time, then she absolutely had time to do your piece that you asked for, but instead just chose not to. Here she is posting all these pictures on social media of all the stuff she's doing, and yet in 6 years she can't even not only get your painting done, but also tell you the accurate price of what to expect. Being told that it's going to be $200 6 years ago, and then being like, oh psych, I raised it by $500. That would really piss me off, especially if it was something that was very sentimental and it was something that I was waiting on. This is a picture of your dad that you really wanted. You've been waiting for this since 2018. So for her to turn around and be like, I'm sorry, but it's going to be $700. I know my worth now, so you're just going to have to pay up. But at that point, it's no, you don't know your worth. You completely took advantage of me. She really did take advantage of your friendship and literally tried to raise the price at the last second, all without informing you first. Seriously, if she was going to raise her price, she should have told you well in advance so that you could have the money ready instead of dropping it on you at the last second. Because that, in my opinion, is completely unprofessional, as well as an incredibly disgusting thing to do. My mom is constantly manipulating my life and constantly making me second guess every move I make. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 28-year-old male and I'm a cardiologist in training, pursuing a PhD, managing various international projects, plus having another part-time job at an outpatient's clinic. I have been living alone for 3 years, and I always had a good relationship with my mother, and I thought it was better than most of my peers. I've always had the feeling that she wasn't satisfied with how I did certain things, but I never explored it more deeply. But everything changed about a year ago when I introduced them to my new girlfriend. Honestly, I thought that they would be thrilled with her. She's well-mannered, college-educated, and very intelligent. I never realized that her tattoos would be such a problem. On the day of the introduction, my mother called me, and the next day she even came to my house in person as soon as possible. I had to listen to how much I had hurt her, that I was a bad son, and that I had disappointed her. She managed in less than 2 hours to analyze my girlfriend and concluded that she was a bad person who liked to harm herself and was mentally disturbed. And this is all because she had tattoos. She then gave me an ultimatum. I had to choose either her or my girlfriend. She then told the whole family, so I also received similar phone calls from my grandparents. After numerous emotional meetings and text messages, she took back the ultimatum as if it never happened. In her eyes, I've made a compromise. I shouldn't mention my girlfriend. I should act as if she doesn't exist and continue visiting them happily as before. Now, of course, it didn't work. I didn't like visiting them. It was always emotionally draining. Every time I mentioned her first name, we would argue. When she saw the location at the place where my girlfriend works, I received blackmailing text messages. When I posted a video with her on social media, my mom had to unfollow me. I tried to limit frequency of visits with my parents, but every time I don't come, I get a message about how cold I am and that I don't make my parents happy. And going low contact doesn't help either, because she always found a way to contact me somehow. Now, of course, I always defended my girlfriend in front of them, and when they made inappropriate comments, I ended the conversation and I would just leave. She doesn't know about many of these things, and she doesn't deserve to suffer unnecessarily. It's unfair for her to be insulted by people who don't even really know know her, especially when she doesn't deserve it. None of my mother's predictions about her ever came true, by the way. I've tried to find compromise and gradually get my parents to at least have a certain level of acceptance. However, I'm just completely exhausted by this, and I see no way out. I'm tired of hearing how I failed as a person, how they sacrificed their whole lives for me, and that I'm just ungrateful, that I don't care about them, and that my girlfriend is more important to me than they are, and that I'm just selfish for not caring about my parents' happiness. No argument seems to work. It's as if my feelings just don't matter. Everything that I bring up from the past is misunderstood or supposedly happened differently than what I remember. They say the whole situation is my fault because I know my mom didn't like tattoos, but I've long realized that this isn't really about my girlfriend. But honestly, it's about me. My parents don't understand that I wasn't choosing between them and my girlfriend, but that I choose myself and the ability to make my own decisions. However, they still feel that if I broke up with her, everything would be perfect again, and we would all just get along. But I really don't feel that way. I feel like they've completely humiliated me and that they are not good people. I've even started to doubt myself. I've even tried many times to view the situation from my parents' perspective, wondering if perhaps I made a mistake and caused the entire situation myself. Objectively, I know that I've already achieved more than what my parents did in their entire lives in terms of work, and I have a perfect relationship with my girlfriend. I don't even think I'm morally at rock bottom. I've acted correctly towards my girlfriend as she is the most important person in my life. I believe there are many things my parents could be proud of. Despite all of this though, I still feel trapped. Just the thought of living in the same city as her evokes this sense of lack of freedom in me. I still feel something like a mother's gaze or a sense of her constant scrutiny. I'm honestly trying to find hope for improvement. I know exactly what I need to do, and I'm looking for the inner strength to do it. I want to go to therapy and cut all ties with them. However, I find this extremely difficult due to the past. My father is a former alcoholic, and I was my mother's support during these tough times. I also feel sorry to lose contact with the rest of the family, especially my sister, but also my father. They don't share my mother's views, but they don't openly oppose her for the sake of household peace. It's challenging also because just over a year ago, everything seemed to be fine, but now I feel completely lost and I really don't know what to do. Yeah, I think everything you're talking about is so true, especially with you saying that you know what you need to do. Like, just from the outside looking in, your mom sounds incredibly obnoxious, and it sounds like she never wants to let you go from her life. And that is obnoxious and so uncalled for. So truly, I hope this all works out for you, because the way your mom is acting is super inappropriate. An entitled Karen breaks into my house, demanding that she use my bathroom as she was having an emergency. But despite the fact that I told her repeatedly that she needs to leave my property, she refused to go, forcing me to call the cops. Here's what happened. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Okay, to kind of set the scene, it was a lazy Saturday afternoon, and I was at home enjoying some peace and quiet. I live in a suburban neighborhood where most people keep to themselves. My house is on a corner, so I get a lot of foot traffic passing by, especially on weekends. At around 2:00 p.m., I heard someone frantically knocking on my door. I wasn't expecting anybody, so I just ignored it at first, thinking that maybe it was some kind of solicitor or something like that. But the knocking turned into pounding, and then I heard someone yelling, "Hello, is anyone home? It's an emergency." So I got up to see what was going on, and I opened the door to find a woman, maybe in her 40s, looking desperate. She immediately blurted out, "I need to use your bathroom. It's an emergency." When she said this, I was taken aback. I didn't recognize her, and she wasn't giving off the best vibes. She had this intense, pushy energy that honestly made me very uncomfortable. I told her I was sorry, but I didn't feel comfortable letting a stranger into my home. She then started getting very angry, saying things like, "What kind of person won't help somebody in need? I'll be quick, I promise." But I stood my ground, and I told her that there was a gas station just down the street that she could use. But before I could react, she pushed past me and ran into my house, heading straight for the bathroom. And I was completely in shock. So I followed her, telling her to get out, but she just slammed the bathroom door shut right in my face. And right then and there, I didn't know what to do. I felt violated in my own home. So I grabbed my phone and I called the police. I stood outside the bathroom door, telling her that I had just called the cops and that she needed to leave immediately. But she yelled back that I was being ridiculous and that she would be out in just a minute. Well, the police arrived quickly, and when they did, she finally came out of the bathroom acting all indignant. She tried to argue with the officers, saying that I was overreacting and that she just needed to use the bathroom. But the cops thankfully were not having it. They escorted her out of the house and gave her a stern warning, but they didn't arrest her. But now I'm left wondering if I did the right thing. Some of my friends think that I overreacted by calling the cops, saying that I could have just waited it out and let her leave, but others think I'm completely justified considering that she broke into my house. So am I the jerk for calling the cops on this lady? What should I do? Wow, this is crazy that anybody in your life would be like, wow, you overreacted. You should have just waited for this lady to get out of your bathroom. It's like, no, that's not how this is gonna work at all. For starters, she literally broke into your house and was like, out of my way, I need to poop, or whatever she was gonna do. Like, that in and of itself is already jarring. Like, I can't imagine someone coming up to my house and suddenly saying, oh, it's an emergency, you need to let me in right now. Like, that would make me immediately suspicious. I would not think they have good intentions in the slightest, and I would assume, oh yeah, they're definitely gonna rob me or something like that. But more importantly, just look at the way she acted. This lady broke into your house. She literally pushed her way past you to go to the bathroom. And it doesn't matter if it was an emergency or not. That doesn't give somebody a license to break into your house and do whatever they want. So no, of course you're not the jerk here, and of course you didn't do anything wrong, because this lady could have been insane. And I really think that calling the cops was the only option in this scenario. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My boyfriend's crazy mom is always blowing up my phone at 2 in the morning, trying to get me to wake up my boyfriend, as he tends to sleep in for his family business. And after dealing with this, as well as her controlling attitude all the time, I'm seriously at my wit's end, and I now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm a 28-year-old female and my boyfriend is 25. Overall, our relationship is practically perfect, and I actually have zero complaints about him at all. But when it comes to his mom, she is absolutely crazy. For starters, he owns and operates a family business with his dad, and when he oversleeps his alarm, which is almost every single day, his mom blows up my phone to try and get me to wake him up, I guess. Now, for further context, my boyfriend is Mexican and I'm white. When we first got together, he jokingly warned me about how Mexican moms are super clingy with their sons, but I wasn't concerned as I felt like I'm a great partner and super likable. His dad speaks basically zero English and his mom speaks very basic English. Like I mentioned, he and his dad own and operate a family business where their shifts start anywhere from 1 o'clock in the morning all the way till 4 o'clock in the morning. After my boyfriend gets off his 12-hour shift, he also usually repairs the equipment with his dad a few times a week. This saves them a lot of money on mechanics work, but it is extremely draining, and they're literally working a 12 to 18-hour shift 6 times a week, sometimes working on Sunday too. And this work will sometimes last until super late in the night, even 11 o'clock p.m., and then they have to start working again at like 2 in the morning. So needless to say, they do an insane amount of work. When we first dated, we lived an hour away, but would hang out multiple times a week after we both got out of work. I would always tell him to feel free to cut off our hangouts whenever he needed to. That way he could get some adequate sleep for work. But during our hangouts, his mom would blow up his phone, just calling over and over again until he would finally just answer and say that he's coming home soon and not to worry. I met his parents about a month into the relationship. We went to eat and it was decent, but neither of the parents really talked to me throughout the whole dinner or even asked me any questions. I tried to ask the mom a few questions and we had no problem communicating, but she was pretty short. I also bought her a bouquet of flowers I made, as first impressions are everything. At the end of the dinner, she commented how he always comes home so late now. I just laughed and said I always tell him to go home, but he doesn't. And then I said, please let me know if you ever want his number, if you ever don't know where he is. Now she just laughed but did not take my number. I hung out with the family for the last New Year's, and it was alright, but a boisterous family friend made a comment about my man's mom when they were taking family pictures, and they said to me, see, she's gotta get family pictures without you. Didn't you know she's super jealous? Now the family didn't notice as they were just taking pictures, but I just kinda laughed it off. If it matters, they did include me in one picture. So it was a weird comment, but honestly, I didn't think much of it. We moved in February of 2024, which was a small 20 minutes away from his parents' house and the business location. He said his mom tried to discourage it, and I know it was pretty fast, so I kind of understood. But as it got closer, she would be crying and begging him not to go, and even offered to pay the deposit he would lose if he backed out, but he decided to stick with it. As soon as we moved in, I discovered his problem waking up on time for work, and I'm guessing his mom would be the one to force him to wake up for work when he was living at home. He falls asleep almost immediately whenever he is idle for too long. He will sleep for long periods of time when out of work, and will sleep through his alarm for almost 2 hours straight every single day. In my opinion, the poor guy is chronically fatigued. He literally works nearly every day a week at 12 to 18 hours a day. He is absolutely exhausted. Also, if he starts late, Sometimes there might not be time to finish all the loads he hopes, but other times the demand is slow enough that whether he starts at 2 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, he is still finishing all possible loads. So it mostly affects what time work is done and what time he can start working on the equipment with his dad. I do try and wake him up a little because the alarms are annoying, but I also let him sleep because I feel bad for how tired he is, and also because it's not safe to be driving extremely sleep deprived. Now, back to his mom. I always felt like she never really liked me. The handful of times that we hung out, which was always just going out to eat, it just feels extremely awkward for me, and the family just speaks Spanish the entire time, and I'm mostly just sitting there the entire meal, either on my phone or sometimes talking to my boyfriend when he talks to me. I always had a problem with the extreme lack of conversation between me and the mom because I always thought it was weird to invite me to a meal and just exclude me the whole time. In June, we went to dinner again, and I thought his mom was finally warming up to me. She was asking me questions, talking to me about what her youngest son was up to in school, and I honestly felt really good. At the end of the meal, she asked for my number, so I really thought we were warming up to each other. Well, 2 weeks later, she started calling me at 3 in the morning when he oversleeps. I personally have my phone on silent, so I never answer or respond the next day as I don't see a reason to. On the 4th of July, I went to a small barbecue with my boyfriend's family and his family friends. And trust me, this went so bad. As soon as I got there, the host's older mother was asking my man how it is living with me, as well as asking what I cook for lunch, but all of this was in Spanish. And I just know they're talking about me because she keeps gesturing to me and you can just honestly tell. They then ask in English, what kind of things do you make for him? Now, I'm an incredible cook, so I pulled out an album I had ready of gorgeous, colorful plates. And right when I do that, they start speaking Spanish again. And then in English, they start laughing. They say to me, you need to start making lunches for his dad too. And I thought it was dumb, but I just laughed it off. Apart from those two sentences, almost nobody says anything to me. At this point, this lady and my boyfriend's mom keep asking him things, talking amongst themselves and laughing a lot, and I'm just on my phone the entire time. I texted my boyfriend that I know they're talking crap about me, and he says they're not talking crap, it's just the way they banter in his culture. Unfortunately, I cry super easily. I felt very uncomfortable sitting there, not knowing what anyone else was saying, and even though I tried not to, my eyes welled up and I just had to get up and go to the bathroom. The wife half of the hosting party comes to comfort me and says she confirmed that nobody is saying bad things, but said that to be honest sometimes, she sees my boyfriend's mom giving me looks. We have a good talk about how it's hard to win over crazy moms, and I then went back to the barbecue. When I get back from the bathroom, the mom is sitting with my boyfriend, and my boyfriend says to me, my mom wants to try your cheesecake, let's get some, shall we? Which was really weird, because why wouldn't the mom just tell me to get the cheesecakes? Also, then eventually everybody tried them, and I got a lot of compliments on them, but my boyfriend's mom just sat there still not talking to me. When we left, we did say the host's mother was basically asking if I can't cook since I'm white, and if I only make frozen food. My issue is that these people make absolutely zero effort to get to know me, to make me feel genuinely included and welcome. The speaking Spanish part only bugs me when I feel like they're cracking jokes, where I just can't even defend myself, or even know if that's what's being said in the first place. I left the 4th of July feeling super upset, and basically said I never really want to hang out with his family ever again. He says the way that they are is just their culture, but I tell him that I'm sorry, but I'm just used to people of all cultures treating me with basic decency and some kind of effort in the very least in getting to know me just a little bit. Overall, he said that's fine, and that what matters in the end is me feeling comfortable because I'm his partner that he wants to marry and that I come first, which satisfies my uneasiness about his controlling mother. Ever since then, I have not seen them, but his mom has been calling me so much when he oversleeps. Like we're talking 8 times in an hour. I have her on her very own special mode of do not disturb so that I don't get disturbed by her phone calls, but I'm getting irritated with her feeling entitled to call me at these insane hours. Should I tell my boyfriend to tell his mom to stop calling me for work-related issues? Should I text her myself? I mean, should I just let her keep calling? What should I do? Okay, I can completely understand where you're coming from, where you're like, okay, his mom is kind of crazy and a little bit controlling. But also, what is the boyfriend doing to try and fix this situation? Like seriously, this is a grown man. This guy's 25 years old. He absolutely should be able to wake up on time for work. Why are you being saddled with that responsibility? Like that really is annoying. It's like, come on, you can't have your mom wake you up all the time, can you? Because the original poster should not be taking that place. So to that end, I can kind of understand why the mom is calling you, because maybe she thinks that you can help him get up on time. But in my opinion, this problem begins and ends with your boyfriend. He needs to not only talk to his mom about stepping off and stepping back, but also figure out his sleep schedule and his work-life balance. Like, this all seems incredibly unfair to you specifically across the board. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would be very unhappy with the way I'm being treated. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out of my wedding after she refused to follow the color scheme? Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 25-year-old female, and when I was 9 years old, my parents adopted my sister, who we will call Jen, who was 7 years old at the time. Jen was thin and fearful due to being neglected, and we did everything we could to make her feel loved. We bought her lots of toys, and basically everything Jen wanted, she got. When my parents asked me to move to the smaller bedroom so that Jen could have her own room, I was happy to do it. When they asked if I would let Jen pick the decorations and cake for my upcoming birthday, I agreed as well. I was so happy to have a sister, and I understood why my parents gave her special treatment. Only the treatment didn't stop. For years, every trip we went on, we had to do what Jen wanted to do. We had to eat exactly where she wanted, and she got to plan all of my birthday parties. If she didn't get what she wanted, she threw a tantrum. I still felt loved and cared for by my parents. I mean, they drove me to practices, bought me things, cooked meals for me, spent genuine family quality time, and gave me advice. But I always seemed second to Jen. As I got older, I did anything I could to leave the house. I got my first job when I was 12 years old, and I even vacationed with my friends instead of family. I played 3 different sports, and I did band. And I took my driver's test the day I turned 16, and I bought a car right after that. And I even went to college on the other side of the country. Now that I make good money, I do things that I missed as a child. I take fancy vacations and throw elaborate parties as I please. And my wedding was no exception. My fiance and I wanted everything to be perfect. And with that, we thought it would be fun to have a color scheme. My favorite color is yellow, and his is blue. So my guests would wear yellow, and his would wear blue, with any mutual friends wearing green. I picked out a dress with green embroidered details, and he picked a boutonniere with green flowers. When Jen found out about this, she was mad. And I didn't actually know this, but she hates the color yellow as it supposedly washes her out. She told me under no circumstances would she ever wear yellow. Now, when she said this, I just shrugged, and I said to her, okay, that's fine, but I would kick you out if you did not wear yellow. And after I said that, there was no further discussion. But fast forward to my wedding day, and Jen came in a purple dress. And right then and there, I told her to leave immediately. The color scheme was perfect, and she literally ruined it. Now, when I said this, Jen refused to leave. That is, until I threatened to call security. The rest of the wedding went smoothly, but afterwards, my parents were furious with me for kicking Jen out. I told them that I warned her she would be kicked out if she didn't follow the color scheme, but they said they all thought it was a joke. They said it was cruel of me to kick my sister out over something so trivial, but I told them that this was my wedding that I threw without their support, so I can kick whoever I want out. My fiance came rushing up to defend me, and even told my parents that they should be ashamed of how they treated me. But over the past few days, a lot of people I've talked to, namely my grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, have all had mixed opinions. Some say that they would not have even invited Jen if they were me, while others are saying that I should have just let it slide. So honestly, am I the jerk for kicking Jen out of my wedding? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because I think Jen was trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get exactly what I want today. Like seriously, if there's some kind of like dress code or color code at a wedding, the very least you could do is follow it. And it's not like Jen didn't know about the color scheme or any of that other garbage. She knew exactly what she was doing going to that wedding. She showed up in a purple dress because she wanted to stand out and literally take away from what you were trying to do. And that, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for calling out my husband and his parents after they tried to embarrass my stepdaughter in front of her friends? Here's what happened. So my husband's parents stayed with us for a few days, and the other night, we had an issue that resulted in my stepdaughter being angry, me being angry, as well as my husband and them getting angry. I met my stepdaughter when she was 6 years old, and I started dating my husband when she was 5, with us getting married when she was 8. Now, I'll admit, when we first met, knowing that her mom had passed away, I thought I would be filling in as a mom-like or at least a second mom type of figure. In my heart, I wanted to be her mom, and for her to be my daughter, but it was clear before we got married that it wouldn't happen. She was actually very resistant to being around me. I told my husband that we needed therapy together before we got married, because she had to be okay with things and we needed to figure out what our family dynamic would look like. I won't bore you with the unnecessary details, but she didn't want me to replace her mom. She was already very insecure about me being around because her parents hadn't been together when her mom passed away, which to her meant that she was alone loving her mom. But she knew what we wanted, for her to love me and see me as another mom. But it scared her and it made her sad. bad. It made her tummy hurt, to quote my stepdaughter. But through therapy, we figured out what the relationship would look like. My husband would be the parent, and I would be an adult in the home and be a safe person for my stepdaughter. My husband would keep the one-on-one time with my stepdaughter, and we would spend some time together naturally over time, and in the way that worked best without forcing it. My stepdaughter would call me by my first name, and I'd call her my stepdaughter and not my daughter. And eventually, we worked it all out, and we have been good with all of that. She and I have a good relationship, and she's a sweet big sister to her half-siblings. It's all very normal. Then, a few days ago, my stepdaughter had brought friends into the house rather quickly, and these were some new friends. She introduced all of us, including me, by my name, but my mother-in-law told her that she could say more than my name. Well, she told them that I was her stepmother technically, but more of a friend. Then my husband and his parents interrupted and said that she should be more generous than that, and that I'm the only real mother she's ever had in her life. And they started to say how grateful she should be to have someone like me as a mother. Well, when she started crying, I told them to stop. I said that my name had been fine. They should stop pushing and trying to humiliate her. My stepdaughter told my husband that she always knew he thought her mom was worthless, but she doesn't. I told her to go get ready and have fun, and I gave her some extra cash. And then an argument broke out between me and my husband and the in-laws. They felt I should appreciate the gesture of defending me, but I told them it wasn't defending me. It was done to humiliate her enough into introducing me how they wanted. My husband regretted his action afterwards, and I told him he'll have to do a lot to make up for it. His parents, however, feel I was cruelly unfair to them, and I should not have snapped at them like I did. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, your husband and the in-laws are completely out of their mind. Why on earth would they ever be like, wow, you should be more grateful to your stepmom. She's the only real mother you've ever had in your life. Like, what in the world is going on right now? That is so rude. You don't say that to a child. Literally, a child who lost their mother. For literally anybody to make that kind of statement and then try to fall back and be like, wow, you were really cruel towards us. That is not only incredibly delusional, but that would be like the only time I ever deal with that, because there's no way anybody's gonna treat this kid in that manner. Like, you guys came to a consensus. You basically figured out what works for all of you, and everything was normal. Like, things really were working out. So for them to step in and be like, no, you have to do it this way. You need to be more grateful. Like, that is crazy to me, and I can never understand that kind of rationale. So no, you're not the jerk, and in my opinion, your husband and the in-laws absolutely need to apologize to her. An entitled Karen steals my breakfast on a cruise line, demanding that I give my breakfast over to her. So I decide to maliciously comply by allowing her to eat it, despite the fact that I had packed that food full of hot sauce beforehand. And I've honestly never been happier to unintentionally give out revenge to anybody in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was on a cruise, and it was the first morning of a 2-week trip to New Caledonia and back. Also, it was my first solo vacation. Now, I'm a chunky guy, and I do love a good buffet, but especially a breakfast buffet. It's the pinnacle of human civilization, and I think it's the greatest achievement of humanity. Anyways, this morning I attacked the buffet with everything that I have. And one small note, as it will be important later on, is that I'm vegetarian, and I have been for about 30 years. And no, I'm not pushy or judgmental about it, and nearly all my close friends eat meat, but it's just not my thing. So I got myself 2 plates loaded with food. I also noticed that the Mexican food station of the buffet had a wide variety of hot sauces. So, as a man who likes his food a bit spicy, I thought I'd try just a little bit of everything. I found a table, I put my plates down, and then I ran off to get some coffee, some water, and some orange juice. And as you can probably tell, I wanted my first cruise breakfast to be as big and as epic as possible. Anyways, I come back 3 minutes later, and sitting at my table about to dig into my plate of food is the entitled Karen of this story. I look at her and I say, "Excuse me, ma'am, but that's my food. I literally just went to get coffee." She looks at me and says, "Could you let me have it? You're young and you can stand in line. I'm old and I can't get around well like I used to. I would appreciate it if you would let me eat your food." Now, this was my first day on a vacation, and I didn't want to mess it up by starting a fight with an old lady over free food. So you know what? I just let her have it. Also, I'm a bit of a germaphobe, and a person that I don't know had a knife and fork in my food, so I wasn't going to eat it anyways. I looked at her and I said, "Okay, but I must warn you, I used a lot of hot sauces on that, so the food may be a little bit spicy." She looks at me and says, "That's okay. I've been around the world. I can handle spicy foods." And with that, I went back around hitting up all the different stations of the buffet, and this time filling up a single plate. As I'm in line for an omelet, the same entitled Karen comes up and starts ranting. She says to me, "Are you trying to unalive me? There were so many hot sauces in there. Your meal wasn't fit for human consumption. And why didn't you get any bacon? What kind of person doesn't have bacon for breakfast?" She She then kept complaining to literally anybody who would listen to her about how I was trying to take her out with the hot sauces, and how my food, which I picked for myself by the way, was completely inedible for her. So I just grabbed my omelet and I found a new table. I felt bad all my other food was wasted, but thankfully this was a big ship, and I didn't have to deal with this entitled Karen ever again. Okay, this story's hilarious to me because you literally got revenge on this lady without even meaning to. For starters, who in their right mind would walk up to someone's plate and be like, I'm gonna eat all of this. This is my food now. I'm old. You can get more food. Like seriously, what is wrong with her? Like at this point, she deserves to eat all those hot sauces. Did she really think it would be a good idea to walk in there and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the first person's food that I can see? Like, I don't know about you, but that's the last thing on my mind when I go to a buffet. I don't want someone else's plate. I want my plate. Like, was she literally sitting around waiting for someone to put down their food and be like, okay, now's my time to strike? Like, what is wrong with her? Why not just get in line and get your own thing? Or even ask like a staff member to be like, hey, I'm old and I can't walk. Can you please make me a plate? I would really appreciate it. Because that would have made so much more sense than stealing from somebody else who you literally just met. Like, why take his food when you can quite literally get your own? It really just doesn't make any sense to me, and I think she got exactly what she deserved. So honestly, I'm kind of glad in your taste of food, because the fact that you put all these hot sauces on this without this Karen knowing, in my opinion, is absolutely hilarious, and overall is 100% deserved. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my sister to stop expecting me to play baby daddy for her child? Because right now, I feel like she's asking way too much of me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my twin sister, who we will call Mary, has a 1-year-old son that we will call Lucas. Now, for a bit of backstory, she had a horrible pregnancy right from the first trimester and had to quit her job since she was spending too much time out of the office. Her ex-boyfriend turned out to be a massive piece of garbage who claimed that Mary had cheated on him and pinned the baby on him. And when my family insisted on taking a paternity test as soon as the baby was born, he agreed but went out for some milk before the due date. After Lucas was born, finances became too tricky with a newborn and with Mary's postpartum complications. She then asked if I could let her stay with me temporarily so she doesn't have to pay rent, and I disagreed. I have an extra room in my house, which I inherited from my grandma, so I don't have to worry about rent either. Well, long story short, it's been tough living with a baby whose mother needs so much more help than one person can provide, and our parents live too far away to be of any help. Anyways, I didn't mind waking up half the time to give Lucas his bottle, or staying with him when she needed some time to herself. I also paid for everything baby related. Things like the hospital bills for the both of them, the food, clothing, diapers, I mean, you name it, I bought it. But now that Mary and my nephew are stable enough that she has now resumed working, she started pushing for more. She expected me to keep paying for everything, but I told her it's harder now that I'm not putting in as many hours and I get paid hourly. But even still, she buys nothing and I end up paying anyways. She also thinks it doesn't make sense to pay for daycare when I'm home most of the day, but I ended up paying for it myself when she wouldn't. So on Monday, she asked me to take Lucas to his hospital appointment, and I just said no. I told her to take the day off for that because my job hasn't been doing well lately as I've been spending too much time taking care of Lucas. She pointed out how this is my nephew, and if I adopt kids, I will need to make sacrifices too, to which I said, okay, I will make them when the time comes, but I'm not Lucas's dad, and although I'm happy to help where I can, I shouldn't be expected to change my life for him. So Mary took a day off, but since the appointment, she hasn't spoken to me except for saying a yes or no answer when I talked to her, and she's been keeping Lucas in her room when he's not at daycare. Now, I love the little guy with all my life, and I'm wondering if maybe I took things just a little bit too far. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk, because honestly, it really seems like she's taking advantage of your kindness. Let's look at the facts here. You literally let her into your house, and you said, okay, I will help you out and I will help you get back on your feet. But like, couldn't you argue that now she definitely is on her own feet? She has a job, she's working, and she now, at least to me, seems like she's ready to take care of her kid by herself. Like, I'm just as compassionate towards anybody else when it comes to being like a single mom or dad. Like, I can only imagine how hard that must be, and truly, my sympathy goes out to Mary in the story. But at this point, it really seems like she's taking advantage of your kindness, and she's trying to force you to step in as the father when you definitely never signed up for that. You're just trying to help her on hard times, and that's literally all you wanted to do. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for saying no, and I honestly think it's a good idea that you set boundaries, because the way she's being demanding and now giving you the silent treatment, in my opinion, is so uncalled for, and you definitely do not deserve that, especially considering all the things that you did for Mary as well as her son. Am I the jerk for not telling my sister that I ran into her ex-husband while I was shopping at Target? Because right now she feels offended, but I'm just left scratching my head if I did something wrong, because right now I really don't know what to do. Okay, so I'm a 30-year-old male, and I got a call at about 12:30 in the morning from my sister who is a year older than I am. She led the conversation with confirming details for a thing that we have later today, and I'm confident that that was just a lead-in because we didn't discuss anything different from what we had already confirmed earlier in the day, so to call me after midnight for that was really not a likely excuse. Well, I didn't have to wait long to find out what the true reason was for her calling. A few months ago, I ran into her ex-husband at a Target self-checkout. The two of them got divorced about a year and a half ago, and they are amicable, but they both seem to hold on to some unresolved feelings. Now, for reference, he and I have always gotten along, and he's also well-liked by family in general, although my younger sister has expressed to me that she has harbored some resentment for some of his behavior around the time leading up to the divorce. I wasn't privy to the details, and I generally have some grace for people not showing up as the best versions of themselves, especially during something as stressful as a divorce. So yeah, we ran into each other. We spoke for a few minutes, we hugged, and then we went on our ways. And I haven't seen, heard from, or reached out to him ever since. However, my sister feels offended that I didn't tell her that I happened to run into him. And to be clear, it's not for any safety concerns or anything of that nature. The phrase that she used was that, oh, it got back to her. And I guess he mentioned it to a mutual friend of theirs at some point, and it recently got mentioned to her. She feels offended and thinks it should have been obvious for me to know that I should have mentioned something like that to her, and that she's disappointed that she had to hear it from someone else. Meanwhile, I'm doing my best to be empathetic, but I'm also thinking like, what are you talking about? I didn't think such a random occurrence warranted me being notified by her. If anything, I can see that she's had some highs and lows in the aftermath of it all, so I was probably less inclined to even bring it up, because if you're in the process of trying to get over someone, me bringing them up for an unimportant, trivial reason seems like it could potentially be triggering. Now, as it is, I don't need all of her requests to make sense to me. If my sister wants me to do that for her, it's honestly no problem at all, regardless of if it makes sense in my mind or not. But I had to exit our phone conversation rather abruptly. Also, I could avoid all of this turning into an argument because I felt like I was being chastised for something I had no awareness of, and I don't think my actions or non-actions were unreasonable or problematic. She's of the opinion that I should have known to alert her of any interactions I have with either of her ex-husbands. I've never been married, but if the shoe were on the other foot, I can't imagine myself caring that much about it. Am I missing something here? Is there some kind of etiquette or protocol for stuff like this that I'm just not aware of? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk here, because it sounds like the interaction you had on Target was really pretty straightforward. Like, this really was not that big of a deal, and I just don't think this warrants her being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call you at midnight. Like, I don't know about you, but that seems really extreme and kind of like a little bit weird in my opinion. Like, sure, it kind of seems like she does have a lot of things going on, and she clearly has some kind of like negative feelings towards her ex-husband or whatever's going on, but that really should not involve you in the slightest. If you were like meeting up with him and going to like baseball games or hanging out together or something like that, then sure, I think that would warrant you having to talk to her about it and be like, hey, I do have like a friendship with him. But this situation is definitely not that. You haven't gone out of your way to meet this guy. You literally just saw him in the Target self-checkout, and that was it. This was literally just a freak incident where you ran into each other in the wild. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all. And if anything, I think this is just evidence that your sister is clearly still mourning the loss of her marriage. And I think that might be something to consider the next time she comes to you about something of this nature. An entitled jerk makes my life a living nightmare, as he constantly complains that his product he ordered from my company hasn't arrived when he wanted it to. So I decided to maliciously comply by throwing this guy a curveball in a way he will never forget. Here's what happened. Okay, so I've worked my way up the ladder at the company where I work, but when I started, I was a support agent. By the time this story happened, I was a team lead of some kind, but I don't remember which. What matters is that I still work directly supporting customers, but I also had a fair amount of agency, meaning that I didn't have to ask for permission or assistance to do anything related to my job. We're a software company, but we used to sell a specific small Bluetooth accessory that worked with one of our applications. It came in several bright colors, and we sold multi-packs. This was also the kind of device you might need more than one of, and it was a popular gift. One year during the Christmas season, our manufacturer messed up gloriously. They didn't deliver all of the inventory we were supposed to get, and worse, much of what we did get was messed up and had serious defects on them. It was a horrible mess and a serious detriment to our small company, and I was on the front lines of cleaning it up. We wound up severely backordered at the busiest time of year, having sold units that should have been delivered, but that we either never received or found to be defective upon arrival. We had to contact people and let them know their orders would be delayed until after the holidays. Some people wanted refunds and other people wanted their items late. We tried to be helpful and bent over backwards to be apologetic, all while trying to keep this debacle from becoming a catastrophe and incentivizing people not to cancel. There was one man who wanted us to perform magic, however. He wanted his order, our largest multi-pack, and he wanted it now. I don't know how many times he contacted us, but I wound up being the only one to deal with him because he would always be escalated to me. I told him over and over again that we couldn't send his order even though we very much wanted to, so we'd be happy to just refund him. If he wanted to wait, there were many others ahead of him to get their orders. Well, he demanded that he get his order done first, and he didn't really care about anyone else that had to wait. He would berate me and try to literally command me to do as he said almost daily for a while. And this is all no matter how many times I explained why I literally couldn't. Eventually, I opened the spreadsheet where we were keeping our back orders, and I moved him to the very bottom. And sure, I was prolonging my own suffering, but this guy had me feeling very petty. After the holidays ended and upper management waged a nuclear war with our manufacturer, the usable stock started rolling in. I bumped a few deserving or eager customers to the top of the list, but mostly I sent them out to order. This guy is the only one I bumped down, but I had something ready for the next time he decided to scream at me. When he inevitably did, I told him we had stock, but others were receiving theirs first, and we had not yet gotten the colors he ordered in his multi-pack. Now, I was sort of planning to do what I did anyways, but he was kind enough to give me explicit permission. He then screamed at me, "I don't care what colors you send. You're gonna send them to me immediately." And you know what? One of our colors included Susan G. Komen pink. The customer was gloriously smug and condescending when I told him we'd go ahead and fulfill his order right away. He definitely thought he had won some kind of victory, but sure enough, the day his package arrived, he sent me an email complaining about all of it. He said to me, "I know I said I'd accept any color, but really? You sent me, a man, an order of nothing but pink? I want these replaced. Send me something else." Well, I told him that's all we had available for him and that conversation was over. And so, as it was, I never heard from this guy ever again. It took a few years before I brought it up, but I've told that anecdote at workplace meetings a few times, including to my boss, the CEO. And I wouldn't take another support job to save an orphan puppy on Earth, but that story was absolutely worth the misery. Yeah, that guy was super demanding and incredibly rude. Seriously, all you have to do is show some semblance of kindness, and in my opinion, a lot of customer service people would probably be more than willing to help you out. At least that's how I felt when I worked those kinds of jobs. It's the people that were like really pushy and rude and condescending towards me that left me with a bad taste in my mouth and very resistant to ever helping them ever again. Like seriously, show me some semblance of like decency and like human kindness, and I will go a long way just to make sure you get what you need. But if you're mean and rude and treat me like dirt, or even act like you're like above me and I'm somehow your slave, like that's the fast track to me ignoring your request and literally putting you at the bottom of the list like this guy did. And for the record, no, I don't think that was petty. I think that's karma working its magic, not to mention the fact that you gave him the brightest pink color he could possibly ever not want. So good for you for getting back at this guy in the way that you did, because his attitude absolutely deserved to get shut down. Am I the jerk for not giving my stepsister my great-grandparents' house, as she claims that she deserves it more than me? Here's what happened. Okay, to make a very long story short, my great-grandparents passed away about 20 years ago, and the house had to be torn down to the studs and rebuilt for several reasons. I'm a 24-year-old female. I was living with my mother in my late grandmother's house with her boyfriend, who is now her husband, and his son, who is about 23 years old. But as tension rose between me and her husband, we'll call him Bob for the sake of the story, as well as her son, who we will call Connor, I decided to move out and get my own apartment. I was tired of being disrespected and made out to be a villain because his son was seen as a perfect angel. I would still come to visit my mother often, but I would leave once either of them got home. Eventually, work finally started on the project house, and basically anything that could be done without a specialist, we did. So me, Bob, Connor, and my mom worked on this house for 5 years. There was a lot of debate regarding who would get the house, either me or Connor, but they decided I would get it because I was living by myself and Connor was refusing to pay rent, which was in a contract he signed with my mom and Bob. And they also decided this for a few other reasons, such as that it's my great-grandparents' parents' house. I have been living in my mini dream home, think maybe a 2-bedroom cottage with about 900 square feet, for about 4 months now. My stepsister, we'll call her Amy, suddenly comes back into the picture because she will date a guy for a few months and then cheat on him and live with a guy she cheated on him with. And she's done this about 7 or 8 times now. Her child child is about 5 years old and has been bounced around with her. Recently, she started calling her father, who is Bob in the story, and asking to move in with him, but he said no, as there's no room for her and a child, let alone her horses. And trust me, she cares more about her horses than her own kid. Fast forward a week, and she's calling again saying, okay, is Sunday okay for him to come pick up the trailer? And Bob asked her where she thinks a huge horse trailer would go, and that's when she says that it's gonna go behind my house. But Bob said that she would need to ask me if that's something that I would want behind the house in the first place. Eventually, she goes quiet. She says to me, can you ask her? She'll just say no to me. But it's like, are you kidding me? You literally just answered your own question. So Bob ends up laughing and says, well, I think she hates me more than you, so good luck with that. Another week goes by and she throws another fit, this time demanding the house. Because according to her, why should I get to live in a nice 2-bedroom house when I don't have any kids or even a boyfriend? Now, her mom, who is Bob's ex, is taking Amy's side and yelling at Bob to give Amy the house. But Bob ends up getting into a fight with the mom about it because it really doesn't seem fair. Now, mind you, I am the only child who has had to work for everything. The house is the only thing I ever got handed to me, and I helped pay for most of it because it was what I wanted. They get whatever they want whenever they want. That is, except for the house. So am I the jerk for putting my foot down and telling my stepsister that she cannot kick me out of my own house? What should I do? You are not the jerk, and I can't believe she even tried to assume that you should leave and she should take it. Your stepsister sounds incredibly irresponsible and very entitled. Like seriously, who's gonna walk up and be like, oh, give me the house, I deserve it, as if her having a baby out of wedlock, as well as cheating on multiple guys, 8 times, somehow means that she's deserving to not only use your property for her stupid horses, but also try to pretend like, oh yeah, I deserve it more than you. But also, can we talk about that for a second? She literally is going from place to place and she still owns horses. Now, I don't know that much about horses. I'm very ignorant on the subject matter, so please take what I'm gonna say with a grain of salt. But I do know people who own horses, and my god, they are so expensive. There is so much time and effort that goes into taking care of those animals that it's honestly amazing to me that someone who sounds this irresponsible even has one horse to begin with, let alone multiple ones. Like, wouldn't you think that maybe if you're having problems, it might be time to sell the horses or at least give them to somebody else? And sure, I get it, they're more than pets, they're like part of the family and all that stuff, but this lady that's being described in this story honestly fits the bill as somebody who not only should not have kids, but also should not be owning large animals like that. So no, you are definitely not the jerk for putting your foot down, because in my opinion, her behavior is incredibly inappropriate. My entitled father-in-law oversteps his boundaries by trying to walk in the middle of my wife giving birth. But after turning him away and dealing with instances similar to this, my father-in-law decided to go on the attack by talking trash about me and my wife on Facebook simply because we asked for some space while my wife was giving birth. And I seriously can't believe the way this guy acted, and I really hope I never have to deal with him ever again. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened about 8 years ago when my wife and I had our firstborn child as a natural birth. My wife's biological father wanted to be there and came like 2 weeks before the due date. He even got a place within walking distance of our house, so he would randomly show up to hang out with her, literally during her time at home on maternity leave as well. Now, this wasn't every day, but it was often enough that it annoyed her as it was always without warning. He also asked her a few times to go and drive him to the bottle shop just so we could stock up on booze. She ended up being a few weeks late, and he seemed to blame us for that just a little bit. Then when the day came and we went to the hospital, we got there at 7 and our daughter was born at 10. He then appeared at the door at 10:15, trying to get in while we were still sorting things out. Like, my wife did just give birth after all. He then came back later when it finally calmed down and it was fine. Fast forward a week and he was still staying nearby. My wife was struggling with breastfeeding, so we had an in-house consultation with a midwife to come over and see if they could help us through this time. Well, 5 minutes into this, we hear a knock at the door, and at this point, I lost my cool with him. I went out to the front and I basically asked him, do you ever call first? When I said that, he apologized and then he went home. And I really do feel pretty awful about that, but it was a stressful time, especially with someone else trying to enter the mix. Jump ahead 3 years and baby number 2 is on the way. And once again, my wife's father wanted to be here when it happened. But this time we told him straight up that we don't want a repeat of what happened last time, and that he needs to please respect our privacy and boundaries. Well, baby number 2 was inverted, so we needed to get a C-section. We booked it, we gave the people the date, but also said we will invite everyone to the hospital once we are ready for visitors and the operation is complete. Eventually, my son is born, and we get back to the room for recovery, and my wife is with the midwives literally cleaning her up and getting her settled. But as that's happening, we hear a knock at the door, and it's her dad once again. And at this point, we just roll our eyes and go with it, as it seems he will never learn. But then things take a twist. My son has a respiratory issue that starts to become an issue the next morning. So he gets rushed to ICU, goes into an iron lung-like device, and my wife and I spend the next week pretty much by his side. And during this time, my 3-year-old daughter has come to visit once or twice with my mom, who is also staying close by. Well, my wife's father gets jealous that he does not get to see our 3-year-old child or even his new grandson. So he decides to post on Facebook that we are shutting him out and that his entire trip was a waste, all because we're supposedly denying him access to his grandkids. But you know what? He was literally the last thing we were thinking about during that week. About a week after this, my son is stable and the main issue seems to have sorted itself out and we can finally take him home. By this point, my wife's dad has flown back to his hometown and has another go on Facebook, and all of his side of the family has turned on us just a little bit. My wife then details what happened in a post, and his support dried up pretty quickly once the full story got out. It took about 3 years after this before he got back in good terms with us, and my wife was pretty much done, but I went to bat for him to give him another shot, and we thankfully have not had a repeat like that ever since. And hopefully, for the sake of me and my family, it stays like that for as long as possible. Wow, the father-in-law in this story oversteps so many boundaries. For starters, the fact that he showed up right after your wife gave birth, and she's sitting there literally exposed after going through probably the hardest thing she's ever gone through. Like, not only do I wonder how he even got back there in the first place, but also that is so rude and obnoxious. And the original poster and his wife have it right. Why can't this guy ever call ahead of time to see if this is a good time? Because I don't know about you, but I despise drop-ins. Like, especially when it's something like super stressful that I'm going through, or some kind of like life event. For me personally, I would rather have somebody call ahead of time to see if this is a good time, instead of dropping by unannounced and just completely interrupting something that is probably really hard for me right now. So honestly, I think the way you guys handled this was perfect, and I'm so glad that you guys defended yourself and put the record straight. Because even though the father-in-law in this story is finally behaving himself, this will hopefully be a lesson that this guy won't forget anytime soon. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I feel that my job is overworking me and neglecting any of its responsibilities to help its employees. And now that I'm receiving less tips as a server, I'm starting to reconsider if this job is even right for me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I work for a hotel as a breakfast server for the buffet. I work the standard 40 hours a week, and I start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I get gratuity and some cash and card tips whenever. But the thing is, nobody wants to work there. Everyone wants to work at the restaurant because tips are way better, and the managers don't want to work in my section because they don't get any tips. They always schedule random people or servers from the restaurant just to get extra hours. They literally come for 5 hours just to bus tables and fill, and then many times they just disappear. Like, they go to the restroom or they sit in the counter chair, and I'm working my butt off, and then I get all the responsibility, such as from my manager taking pictures if an area is dirty. We get many people coming in, maybe about 200 people per day overtaking things. And then, yeah, of course, people leave, and they get like 40% of my gratuity. They're not restocking anything, they're not taking any of the trash out, and then we sometimes open in the evening, and the night shift barely sets anything up. Sometimes some people no show, no call, and they still have the job and get no write-up. Most of them are friends, and the managers are hanging out with them and drinking, so they just don't even care. I talked to one of the managers, but yeah, they definitely didn't care. There's no food or beverage director, and they can barely hire anybody. They hired another new manager, and she told me how it's been crazy, and that people are not showing up, and then nothing happens. Before, I would work with another manager, and all the tips would go to me. But now that I pull my money, everything's decreased. I used to make about $1,000 a week in tips, but now I make maybe $400 to $500. Now, I like the place, but I am overworked, and people throw responsibility on me and just don't do anything. And now I'm making less money. What should I do? Okay, for starters, I don't think you actually like your job. Like, everything you mentioned in this story is literally negative. These people are clearly taking advantage of your willingness to work, and they're also literally not even taking the time to do their job. Like, I can understand why people are quitting and not showing back up. They're not supporting their staff, and they're literally doing very little to help people out. Like, for all intents and purposes, this does not sound like a good work environment at all. So if I was in your shoes, I would be reconsidering working here in the first place. They don't sound like a good working environment, and honestly, you can find way better than this. And I totally understand your frustrations, by the way, especially when you're the only one doing your job and trying to like get things done. So So hopefully you can find something better than this, because the job you're describing sounds absolutely awful. An entitled Karen and her husband screams and cries at me and my coworkers, all because she feels that our prices are too expensive at our family-owned restaurant. Here's what happened. So I work at a small family-owned barbecue restaurant. It's set up like Subway, where you go down the line and order what you want, and then we ring you up and take your payment at the end. I will say though that the food is hot and fresh and definitely good quality. Now, it's not cheap, but we certainly have plenty of people willing to pay the prices. My bosses, namely the husband and the wife who own the restaurant, are genuinely good people who try to keep the prices reasonable while also trying to be able to keep paying their employees a livable wage and give us benefits. Anyways, the other night, this entitled couple came in. As soon as you walk in, there are two large TV screens right next to each other with our menus posted on them. One lists the sandwiches and the other one lists the plates. Obviously, the plates are more expensive because it is a lot more meat, plus it comes with sides. And we do also sell all of our meats by the pound, and this is clearly stated on the menu, so you can order smaller portions of meat if you want to. But anyways, both the husband and wife ordered brisket plates, and the brisket is the most expensive meat, but also the most popular that everybody raves about. The brisket plate is $20, and apparently the wife did not know this. As I rang them up at the end, she let out a surprised gasp as she looked at what I rang up on the screen and demanded to know why they were being charged $20 per plate when the menu said that they were only $10.99. She apparently had only looked at the section of the menu that listed the sandwiches because the brisket sandwich is $10.99. And I would really like to know what decade she's living in if she thinks a half pound of brisket and two sides would be $10.99. You can barely even get a meal at McDonald's for that cheap anymore. Well, this is how the conversation went. I said to her, "Oh, the $10.99 is for the sandwich. The plates are more expensive because they automatically come with the sides." She said to me, "Well, I didn't see anything else on the menu other than those prices for the sandwiches. This is ridiculous. We definitely won't be coming back here. And you didn't charge us for anything extra?" I looked at her and I said, "No, ma'am, I did not." She then lets out a frustrated huff as she says to me, "So it really costs almost $50 for two people to eat here?" But I said to her, "Well, that depends on what you order. Brisket is our most expensive meat, but we have several cheaper options." This entitled Karen then looks at her husband. "Well, do we even have that kind of money?" Now, the husband, who has been silent the whole time, sheepishly pulls out three $20 bills and hands them to me. She then says, loud enough for me to hear, "Wow, no wonder their parking lot is empty." And you know what? For reference, it was actually only about 20 minutes before closing time, which was the only reason our parking lot was ever empty, because in reality, we had just gotten through a very busy dinner rush earlier in the evening with plenty of people who would gladly pay $20 for brisket. So trust me, if they never come back, they definitely would not be missed. Yeah, I will never understand someone who goes into like a family-run restaurant and tries to start some kind of weird argument, especially after they don't read the menu. Like seriously, I'm pretty sure it's well explained that yes, the option you're getting is more expensive for this reason. And it's so funny that they try to take shots at your restaurant, even though you guys were ready to lock up. They first come in with this weird attitude, then they say they're never coming back, only to then insult the place that's giving you dinner. So hopefully they don't come back, because that kind of attitude is awful, and I would hate for you to have to deal with that for a second time. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that he couldn't buy another $300 reptile after he lost a different one that he bought literally 5 weeks ago? Here's what happened. So my husband and I were butting heads for about 6 months because he wanted to buy a snake, and I did not want one in the house at all. I finally broke down and said that if he got one, I wanted nothing to do with it, and that it had to be in the basement. Well, he ended up spending about $800 on all the stuff for the snake, and the snake escaped the enclosure within 24 hours of getting it. Mind you, this snake cost $250 alone, and this was 5 weeks ago, and we still haven't found it. So now he has decided he wants to get some sort of exotic lizard that will be around $350, plus he is going to need a few more accessories for it. He also said that it will outgrow the current enclosure that was meant for the snake within the year, and that he will need to purchase a bigger one in the future. I then started expressing my annoyance at how expensive this is getting, and I then asked him if he could just get something smaller and not as expensive. He then started ranting about how I pay $200 a month for a gym membership, and that I can do that but won't let him get a reptile. But I don't think a gym membership and a reptile are even on the same level. My gym membership is for my health, an investment that will pay for itself over time. I go to the gym 5 to 6 days a week, so it's not like I'm paying for it and not using it. It's a CrossFit type of gym with instructor-led classes. I've lost 28 pounds since January, and finally I'm feeling better about my body. So to me, this reptile is something he wants and not needs. It would be like me spending $1,000 on a new pair of shoes or something like that. So am I the jerk for not letting him spend another couple $100s on a second reptile because we lost the first one, even though I spend $200 a month on a gym membership? What should I do? Okay, this story is insane to me because seriously, there's like a glaring detail that needs to be addressed. Where in the world did the snake go? You don't just get a snake and say, oh no, I lost it. Time to get something else, it's fine. Like no, I would be tearing my house apart trying to find that stupid snake. I wouldn't be able to sleep, go to the bathroom, or literally do anything in that house until that snake is identified and caught. Like why was that not a priority for this guy? Why wouldn't he be like, wow, I spent, I don't know, $1,000 getting this set up. Maybe I should try to find this snake and not waste all this money for nothing. Like for him to go on to like the next exotic animal without first addressing this issue is insane in my opinion. And you know what? Him trying to compare your gym membership to his stupid pets is just as stupid as you think it sounds. It really doesn't make any sense and there's really no good excuse for that. Because like you said, your gym membership and these pets are not the same thing. One of them is for your health and the other one is just because, I don't know, he wants it. So no, you are not the jerk for shutting him down because the way he's been acting, in my opinion, is absolutely insane. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for demanding my payment from my sister-in-law for an art commission that she hired me for? Here's what happened. I'm a 20-year-old female and I do digital art commissions. And I can make stickers and prints or just digital copies. My wife, who's 20 years old, has a brother, and that brother has a girlfriend. I made a drawing for my wife for free, and my sister-in-law asked for a drawing. It was something new for me, but I accepted and I took the request, warning her that this would cost her some money. But with that in mind, my prices are cheap, and I can wait for any kind of payment, especially if I know them. After I gave her the art that she asked for, I told her my payment options and how much, maybe 15 to 20 bucks. And she said that she just started her new job and that she gets paid in 3 days. And you know what? I was fine with waiting. Fast forward to 3 days later, and I finally asked her, and she said she couldn't because she had to pay rent because they still live with my wife's parents. So I waited 2 more weeks and then I talked to my wife. I asked her if she thought that I would get paid, and she gave me the truth. She said that she doesn't think that they're late on rent, but instead she's wasting all of her money online just shopping for stuff. Now at this point, I got upset. I waited a day or two and then I texted her and I said the following. Hey there, I just wanted to see if you had gotten paid yet because I've been told that you aren't known to pay dues. I really need that money and it's not expensive. Please and thank you. Well, she gave me the money and later on went screaming to my wife's brother, to which he took his anger out on my wife. I felt so bad for making my sister-in-law mad because my wife had a good relationship with her brother and my sister-in-law almost left him. I've had people tell me that I was the jerk for not waiting longer and for saying it in the way that I did. So I need to know, am I the jerk in this scenario? What should I do? First of all, of course you're not the jerk. Why on earth would this lady ask for an art commission if she was not ready to pay the artist in the first place? That literally is so backwards it's not even funny. And it's not fair for the original poster to put all this work into an art piece only to then be forced to like chase down this person and figure out if they're even gonna pay you or not. Like if you're really struggling with rent and all this other money problems, then maybe you shouldn't be hiring an artist to make you some kind of artwork. Like talk about completely burning a bridge right in front of you, because if I was the original poster, I would never take another art request from that lady. Like she would be blacklisted in my opinion. Also, I would not feel bad about this at all. Is this sister-in-law seriously getting upset because she had to pay for something that she hired you for? Like seriously, what's her problem? Just pay the 20 bucks and move on with your life. It is literally not that much. And it's not like she didn't know the price ahead of time. Like she literally knew, okay, this is super cheap and I can probably do this. So in my opinion, no, you are definitely not the jerk, because what you're asking honestly should have been taken care of like right away. And for you to have to wait weeks just to get any kind of payment, in my opinion, is a really messed up thing to do. Am I the jerk for telling my parents exactly how I feel about our families, especially considering how complicated everything's become? Here's what happened. Okay, it's important to note that my parents are messy people. They were together for years, had my brother, and then broke up when he was 8, but stayed married, just not living together. And neither of them filed for divorce. They ended up getting back together after a few years, and then they had me. But they were over for good by the time I was 1 year old and had finally filed for divorce. Both of them got into other relationships and then cheated on those relationships with each other before finally settling into the marriages they're currently in. I was 8 when my mom got married and 10 when my dad got married. And those relationships started 2 to 3 years before the marriages. My mom's husband had 2 kids when he met my mom, with both of them being younger than than me, and together they had 2 more kids who are now 7 and 4 years old. My dad's wife had 3 kids technically when they got married, with one being her stepkid, who sees her as her mom, and the other 2 are her biological kids from the marriage with the stepkid's father. Together, they have a 5-year-old, and they also have taken in my wife's 2 nephews from her sibling who passed away, and they decided to adopt them. There has been this tug of war between both sides for literally as long as I can remember them being together. My brother got out of all of it, and he could do that by the time it all really started popping off. But I was stuck in the middle of it. My mom and dad wanted me to prefer their side and shove their kids and stepkids down my throat so I would have a stronger relationship with either side. They compete for me to show the most attention to their family. They make it into something crazy and way too complicated. Like I'm supposed to see dad's side as true siblings, even the non-biological ones, and somehow love them more than anything else according to my dad. And according to my mom, it's her side that I have to feel that way about. They have always asked which siblings I prefer, or they ask leading questions about which side I prefer, where it's not directly asking me that, but you know that's what it's about. 2 days ago, we had this meeting with people from my school. It's my senior year, and I'm a part of an educational program for school for speech and reading. During the meeting, they brought personal stuff into it, and it spilled out more once we left. They directly asked me which siblings I prefer and who I'm closest to, and they also wanted to know how I really feel about everything and so much more. So I said exactly what was on my mind. I told them that my brother is the only sibling that I really love, that he's my favorite family member, and really it's the only sibling that I have a connection to, and that I see him way more than they realize. And when I said that, they were completely shocked, not only about my answer, but the fact that my brother and I stayed close and see each other when he doesn't even see any of the other kids. And it was right then that my parents got incredibly pissed. They started yelling, and that's when I told them that they can't ask questions and then blow up at me when they don't like the answers. But my parents said they can do what they like as my parents, and they even made it another big deal yesterday, where I had my mom on the phone, and since I was at my dad's, he was also bothering me about it. So am I the jerk for the way that I answered my parents' question? Because right now I am exhausted dealing with the way they treat me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, let me just say first and foremost that this is probably one of the most complicated family situations I've ever heard of. Quite literally, you have so many step siblings it's not even funny, and the fact that you're somehow supposed to keep track of that on top of like, I don't know, entertaining both sides of the family must be incredibly stressful and so hard to deal with. Like I'm starting to understand why your brother was like, no, I'm definitely not dealing with that. Because if I was in his shoes, I would be like, wow, I dodged a train. This is a disaster waiting to happen, and seriously, I would be glad to be away from that. But you don't have that luxury. The original poster is 17 years old, and they are literally stuck in between 2 families, and it is simply not fair. Because you should not be forced to pick a side. If your parents were doing this right, and they weren't trying to use you as some kind of like bargaining chip to prove the other person wrong, then they would be supportive of you in trying to figure your life out, because they literally made everything so complicated. So I can say if I was in your shoes, I probably would have reacted the same way. I would have chosen my brother as well, just so neither party can ever win any of these arguments that you never wanted to be a part of, because their behavior right now is incredibly inappropriate, and you do not deserve to go through this kind of stress in the slightest. My friend lied to me about having cancer, all in some weird attempt to try and see if I even care about him in the first place. But now our friendship is practically ruined, as I am now highly considering blocking him and never talking to him ever again. This story also came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories, and don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Jerk. Okay, just for a bit of context, I'm a 17-year-old male, and my friend, who we will call Jack, is 16 years old. For a while, I've had braces because of my underbite, and when Jax called me, my dad was driving me home from my dentist appointment, which Jack absolutely knew I had at the time, and he's almost perfect every time at guessing when I'm done with them. On the way home, he FaceTimed me while I was laying in bed. He was groaning, and he actually looked really sick, and when I asked him what was wrong, he told me straight up, "I have cancer." I sat there for a second thinking about what he just said. He wasn't on speakerphone, but since I was sitting next to my dad in front of him, my dad asked me if anything was wrong, and I just said no and went back to Jack. I then asked him, "Are you serious?" Which he responded by saying yes. I then asked him if he was in the hospital, and he said no again, to which I responded by saying, "Okay, well, why not? Does nobody know what's going on?" He then told me, "Oh, after they gave me this thing that is attached to my arm, they let me go home." After he said that, I knew that something was off. So I asked him, "Okay, could you show me the thing on your arm?" To which he said, "I don't feel comfortable doing that." So at this point, I thought he must be going through it right now, so I just didn't want to push it. So I told him that I had to to go and that I would call him back later on and to please get better soon. After I hung up, I told my dad that my friend just called me and said that he had cancer. My dad then asked me if I was sure, and I said yes. Well, 1 week later, I get a call from my other friend who we will call Aaron, and Aaron is in the friend group with me, him, and Jack. And apparently, Jack had called him and said that he had COVID, but I cut him off and said, yes, I know he has cancer. To which Aaron responded by saying, okay, but I thought he had COVID. Well, once I heard that, I knew that Jack had been lying to me. So I told Aaron that Jack was definitely lying. And he said that he already knew that because he had just been in his house yesterday, and there were no signs of anything that would prove that he was even sick. So me and Aaron came up with a plan to get him to confess. But the day that we were going to go through with our plan, I get a notification from Jack. Aaron was with me in the house, so I brought my phone to him, and we read it all together. The text was from Jack, and he was confessing that he lied and he was sorry. Now, I was happy he confessed, but then what he did actually sank in, and I was absolutely pissed. The main reason I was mad was that, for starters, my uncle died to cancer when I was very young. Secondly, his excuse for it was to say, I just wanted to see if you cared about me. So after this, me and Aaron stopped talking to him. Aaron blocked him, but I didn't, because I feel like I was too harsh, and every now and then, I text him something, still trying to figure out why he did it, because I don't believe he only did it because he thought I didn't care about him. So am I the jerk here? What should I do? Okay, I'm gonna say it straight up. Your friend Jack is a massive piece of crap. First of all, anyone who's like, oh yeah, I have cancer, and then turns around and says, oh yeah, I was lying to see if you actually care about me. Like, that is such a horrible thing to do. It legitimately has no good excuse. I don't even care that this guy's a teenager. That is not something you joke about or even like lie about in any capacity. And I honestly think that anyone who would lie about having cancer is a massive piece of garbage. And that's my honest opinion, because just like the original poster, I've also had family members who've been affected by cancer, and that is just downright offensive to lie about. So for him to do this is really just so disrespectful, and if that was me, I would lose trust in him completely after that. Like, what else is he lying about just to gain attention? Because legitimately, that's all this was. He was just doing some weird attention-seeking behavior in probably one of the worst ways possible. So no, I don't think you're the jerk for pulling away from him, and I think your friend Aaron is really smart in this scenario for straight up blocking him, because I really believe that this is not someone you want to call your friend, and I think you can absolutely do better than somebody who lies about having cancer. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my daughter try and pursue swimming as a professional career by telling her that it's too late to even get started? Because right now, my husband is very upset with me, and at this point, I seriously do not know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 45-year-old female, and I have 2 kids. I have a 16-year-old female that we will call Laura, and a 14-year-old male that we will call Kyle. Both of my kids take competitive swimming as a hobby. However, Laura is more athletically inclined than Kyle is, and takes swimming more seriously than he does. She has been to regional and state championships a few times since elementary school, and has even gotten close to qualifying for nationals a year ago. Recently, Laura came up to me and told me that she really looks up to athletes like Michael Phelps and other great swimming legends in Australia and across the globe. She is a huge Olympics fanatic like our family, so I wasn't surprised at first. However, she then told me that she wanted to pursue swimming professionally, because in her words, she's made a lot of progress and thinks it's possible for her to get to the Olympics if she just keeps training harder. She also told me she really wants to represent Australia at the Olympics in the future, and that she cannot live without swimming. However, I shut her down really quickly after she said that. I told her that there's athletes younger than her already swimming at the Olympics in the preliminary stages, and even at the finals. I reminded her that Michael Phelps was only 15 years old at his first Olympics, and she didn't even qualify for nationals. And then I finally said that it was a bit late for her to try and pursue swimming professionally. I then reminded her how rigorous and strict the training was, both physically and mentally, how it was much more different than her swimming lessons. I also told her that she could put aside swimming until university, and that education was much more effective than athleticism. Well, after I said that, my daughter looked sad and nodded before heading to her dad's room, and I heard crying in his room. After half an hour had passed, my husband came downstairs and confronted me by saying that what I told my daughter was extremely cruel and it put down her self-esteem significantly. I retaliated back, saying that I was only expressing concern for Laura and that my concerns were realistic. After I told my husband my thoughts, we got into a bit of a dispute, because in my husband's words, my daughter's dreams were very realistic and that I shouldn't police my daughter's career autonomy. So I really need to know, am I the jerk for what I said to my daughter, what should I do? Okay, I'm gonna take a pretty firm stance here and say that yes, you are absolutely the jerk. Your daughter is 16 years old. She has her entire life ahead of her when it comes to like figuring out a career. So for you to shoot down her dreams like that all at the drop of a hat and then have the audacity to compare her to Michael Phelps and be like, well, he made it to the Olympics at 15 and you didn't even qualify for nationals. Like that really sucks, and I really cannot believe you would do that to your own kid. This would be different if they were 26 and they said, oh, I want to be a competitive swimmer. Like at that point, I would agree if you said, okay, it's way too late to do this. You need to figure your life out, and this is not the time to pursue something new like this. But that's not what your daughter's doing. Like, you don't know what kind of future she could have in swimming. She very easily could excel and be a really good swimmer on an international stage. And by the way, if you're really from Australia, the fact that she's coming close to getting into nationals, in my opinion, is a huge deal. Australia has some of the best swimmers on the planet. Like, who's to say she wouldn't break through in her senior year of high school, make it into like the national competition, and then excel from there? Like, you definitely don't know that. And who's to say that she wouldn't use her swimming to go to college? Like, the way you handle this was completely inappropriate and very cruel. Like, your husband is 100% right. So yes, I think you're the jerk, and I think you really should apologize to your daughter, because she is still young and she has every right to dream just as much as anybody. Am I the jerk for telling my father that he's no longer allowed to cook for my kids after he tried to cook us meat that expired over 3 years ago? Because right now, my dad is very offended, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old female, and my father shops like a doomsday prepper. Whenever he gets groceries, he buys enough to feed a family of 5. He's also the type to buy food that he doesn't plan on eating anytime soon, and he has it just in case he might crave it. And trust me, this has always been a problem. When I was younger, my sister and I spent more time at our mom's place, and we weren't there often enough to eat much. Nowadays, he lives alone, so even less of what he buys is even eaten. The result has always been the same. A lot of the food that he buys ends up either spoiled or sitting in a freezer until the end of time. We've never eaten anything that's rotten or moldy, but my dad has always refused to listen when I tell him this is bad for his health. My family went to his place for dinner about a week ago, and I arrived to help my father out as he planned on making burgers, and my husband would come later with our kids. I had offered to buy some burgers when we decided on them, but my father said that he had some at his place. I didn't think anything about what that could mean until I saw him pull out a box of burgers and some cheese from the very bottom of the freezer. Now, as both had clearly been there for a while, I checked the expiration dates. The cheese expired in February, and the burgers expired in March of 2021. I asked my father if he actually planned on cooking that food, and he said yes, as both were frozen and still fine to eat according to him. I told him I didn't care how edible he thought the food was. The meat was older than my daughter. We could think about something else to make, or I could have my husband pick up some burgers on his way to my dad's place, but I am not having my kids eat that. Well, when I said that, my father got offended. He started going on about how the food was safe and how a dozen nutritionists had said so, but these are literally some guys his girlfriend found on TikTok. He said he couldn't believe I didn't trust him. He continued talking about how dramatic I was being for a while, but I was very upset at the way he responded. Finally, I said to him, my kids aren't eating that, and I don't want you cooking for them again. Either my husband buys the burgers or we are not staying for dinner. Well, eventually, my husband ended up buying the burgers, and we ate them peacefully, and no one fought in front of the kids. The next day, my father told me he was upset by what I said. He said he felt offended that I'd accused him of putting his grandchildren in danger like that, but I told him that wasn't my intention. I just didn't want to feed my kids 3-year-old meat, but he just refused to listen to me. My dad's still insisting that I'm the one being dramatic. My husband is completely on my side, but thinks forbidding my father from cooking for our children might have been a little bit too much. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because there is no way I'm eating 3-year-old meat. That should have been rotated around, and he should have used that way sooner than March 2021. And by the way, that's just when it expired. Sometimes this meat is good for like a year and a half, so I'm willing to guess that he probably bought this back in like, I don't know, 2018 or 2019 or something like that. And that would be especially true if it's like packaged and it's meant to be stored for a long time. But regardless, if something expired back in 2021, there's no way I'm ever going to eat it, because in my opinion, this is just further proof that your father's being irresponsible with his food. If someone wants to have a large supply of food storage, then go for it, but they need to be responsible with it and actually use the food that they have in their storage. Otherwise, you're going to look up and have 3-year-old meat sitting in your freezer. So no, I don't blame you for denying him ever cooking that food for you, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. An entitled jerk demands that I turn down my music on my property, as he claims that it's too loud and that the lyrics are way too vulgar. So I decide to maliciously comply by loudly playing opera music from my 12-inch subs on my car in a way that he could never possibly ignore. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I need to give some information. This happened over 12 years ago at my family's house when I was about 22 years old, and I was passionate about my old SUV that I had painted a metallic red with neon lights underneath and had on 22-inch chrome rims and a decent stereo that you could hear about a quarter-mile away. Our neighbors themselves paid absolutely no attention to anything going on outside their doors, and although we are all friendly and any one of us would drop what we are doing to help one of us in need, in 20 years, you can count the conversations that we've exchanged without taking off your shoes, and we all have our own little hobbies. One of them has goats and chickens, another keeps bees, and one across the road repairs lawnmowers, ATVs, and such, and I never do anything that would normally invite onlookers. But one Saturday afternoon, I was changing the oil and spark plugs on my SUV with a beer and some Cheetos in our driveway, and I had a tiny speaker hooked up to my phone playing some old school rap. And on that day, the lady on our left was having some landscaping and yard work done. I was rolling around under my truck on my back, literally elbows deep in the greasy mess and a little irritated because I had just dropped my 10mm socket, but as I did that, I see some steel-toed leather boots walking the 30 feet up to my driveway and up to my Suburban. I roll out from underneath my car and I gave the guy a very confused look. Well, he straight up just told me to turn the music down because he didn't like the vulgar and violent lyrics. And seriously, it's like gospel music must be the only music he ever listens to. And I know for a fact that this little speaker couldn't possibly be legible to anybody 50 feet away, especially if he's concentrating on cutting shrubs and planting flowers and such. Despite my passions, I'm not a complete jerk. So I say to him, okay, no problem. I'll take care of it as soon as I get my hands wiped off. Have a good day. He then stomped away in a fit, muttering some awful things underneath his breath. And when I heard some of the vulgar things that he was saying, that really sickened me. But it was right then that I had a brilliant idea. I immediately turned off my tiny speaker playing Underground Kings and pulled out the battery jump box, put it on my truck's battery, and went inside my house and got my opera CD collection and rolled down all the windows to unveil my 4 12-inch subs and 8 6-inch mids, and I put on the Valkyrie by Wagner and unleashed the stereo's 2,000 watts and went back under the SUV to finish draining the oil. Now, the look on this guy's face was priceless. I guess he didn't think that someone like me had a taste for opera, which is not usually something I bring out on a hot day of rolling around in the oil, but I do enjoy it when I'm relaxing in my den sometimes. After about 20 minutes, I was done with the tune-up, and I started up the car and decided to drive it up and down the road just to make sure that the oil level was settled. I parked back in my driveway, shutting everything down, and as I put everything away, I see the landscaping truck leaving without taking the time to close his tailgate, and by some kind of sweet karma, some of his tools rolled out as he slammed the gas pedal. And it was right then that I had to turn around so he wouldn't see my ear-to-ear grin. 2 days later, while taking out the trash, I waved to the neighbor lady who was having tea on the porch, and I explained what happened, and I wanted to apologize if I caused her any problems with her landscaper. Well, that sweet old lady just laughed and said, oh, that guy's a jerk anyways. And he even tells her grandson to lower the volume on his video games if he's ever over at her house while he's working. But even though I still see the same landscaping truck on occasion, I'm sure that this guy won't be forgetting me anytime soon. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if someone's not bothering you and they're doing something that's literally away from you and they might be making like a little bit of noise, then you have no right to go over there and be like, you need to turn all your music down. You need to be quiet. You're disturbing me. Like, no, that is not how this works, especially if they're on their own property and it's like a normal time of day. Now, if this guy was playing music that was really loud in the middle of the night and you were somehow like a neighbor or something along those lines, then sure, it's time for them to be quiet. But if they're out on their own property, literally fixing up their car and trying to get something done, and you walk over there all disgruntled and say, you've got to turn it all down, then in my opinion, you are in the wrong and you absolutely deserve to be humiliated and put in your place. An entitled Karen freaks out on me after she tried to buy alcohol for her son who very clearly could have been underage. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of information about me, I don't really drink or do any kind of substances, and I've been homeless for a while, but I managed to find myself a job. And this situation literally just happened to me. I was sitting at the counter, as my job involves renting boats and cottages, but we do have a storefront that sells beer, fishing supplies, boat rentals, and food. A person came up to the counter with a 24-pack of beer and tried to buy it. The guy looked young, maybe under 19 years old. And for reference, I'm Canadian, so you need to be 19 to purchase alcohol. This guy didn't have any identification, so I told him that I couldn't sell him booze. Well, he clapped back at me, saying it's okay because he's 20, but I told him I can't sell you anything without an ID. No ID, no sale. So at this point, he really started to talk down to me, saying he's old enough and told me not to make him go get it. He then pointed to his car and said that he's busy. So I said to them, okay, so you're driving without a license? And when I said that, this guy got flustered and finally left the store. About 30 minutes later, this older woman walks in and I see the kid from before outside. She grabbed a 24-pack and came to the counter. She pointed outside and asked if I was the person who wouldn't sell her kid any beer. And I just said, yes, if you don't have an ID, I'm not going to sell it. She huffed at me and said, whatever, and then tried to make her purchase. So I asked her, does your kid have his ID on him now? But she said no, that she's buying the beer. But I said, unfortunately, I can't sell it to you without him having an ID. This lady then started to scream at me, saying that she's in her 40s and that she has her license. But that's when I explained that I couldn't sell her alcohol, knowing that she's giving it to a potentially minor or someone without an ID. She then screamed and called me a moron. She flipped me off and said that she was going to call corporate to complain about me. I told her, ma'am, it's a small business, but I'll happily give you the owner's number. Well, she eventually left and I called the owner to explain everything. And trust me, she was not even mad. Instead, she laughed and said that I handled it perfectly. Yeah, I think you handled that perfectly as well. And honestly, I think the fact that this Karen seriously thought she could buy alcohol for this kid without ever trying to account for his age or even him having an identification in the first place, like that is crazy to me and that is not the mark of a good mother. So good for you for standing your ground and not letting her break the law and probably get you in trouble. Because if something went wrong, I guarantee you this absolutely would have fallen on your shoulders. Would I be the jerk if I said no to my parents moving into mine and my husband's house that we are literally renovating as we speak? Here's what happened. My husband and I recently got married in January of 2024 and have been waiting to move into our own 3-bedroom apartment that is still going through renovations that's taking longer than expected. My husband moved into my dad's 1-bedroom apartment after we got married, as no one else has been living there except for me. I've also been paying rent ever since I started working. For context, my dad has been living in a rented, semi-detached home with his stepmom and her mother ever since he remarried 7 years ago. They also have a male tenant living with them in the house who is rarely home due to his working hours. Also, my dad's mother-in-law owns a studio apartment that is currently vacant. A few months ago, my dad came to us and told us that the owners of their rental house wants it back to undergo renovations and then renting it at a higher value, which my parents clearly cannot afford. While my husband and I were house hunting, we brought it up to my dad and offered to let them stay with us and at no cost. Well, he declined, as he said my stepmom would not feel comfortable having to live with another guy at close proximity, namely my husband. Also, it's too far from her siblings and the city center, and she is used to living in landed properties, so an apartment would be too small for her. We also offered to move out of his house so that they can move in, but he declined, as there is only 1 bedroom and her mom insists on following my stepmom wherever she goes, even though she has her own house. Well, yesterday, my dad sat me and my husband down to let us know that he will be moving in with us to our new home, as time is running out for them, and that they'll move out after 4 months once the renovations are done. However, my dad told us that it will be him, my stepmom, her mother, and their tenant, and they will all be paying us rent. But I was really confused, as this is a 3-bedroom apartment, so where would we have any kind of space for the extra tenant? He then continued, saying that me and my husband can continue living in his 1-bedroom apartment while they live in our new home for the next 4 months. Well, that got me angry, because they have decided to not live with us, but somehow made the decision about where we will be living. I had to maintain my composure, as I was with my family and I didn't want to ruin the day. Once we were home, my husband and I sat down and talked about what we were going to let my dad know if he ever were to bring the conversation up again, and have decided that they can live with us and still not kick us out, or they can live elsewhere since they actually have choices instead of choosing the easy way out. So would I be the jerk if I denied him living in our new apartment? What should I do? Okay, this is ridiculous, because if I was in the original poster's shoes, these people would not be moving into my new apartment. That's not happening. That is an insane demand that I would literally ignore right there on the spot. He can find another apartment somewhere else, and he has no right to try and kick you out of your 3-bedroom apartment that you're literally getting fixed up so that you can live there. Like, that just makes me really mad even just thinking about it. So no, you would not be the jerk for telling them to kick rocks, because these people are being very selfish, and it quite literally is only going to be at your expense. An entitled, greedy landlord tries to force my friend out of their house by by raising the asking price by nearly $80,000, essentially pricing my friends out completely and risking them with the possibility of being homeless. So I banded together with my friends and I decided to get some revenge, as we sabotaged every single attempt these owners made at trying to sell this place. And as a result, my friends were able to buy this place for a far cheaper price than what these greedy jerks were trying to offer. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, gazumping occurs when an agent or seller accepts an offer you make to buy a property at an agreed price, but the property is sold to someone else. This usually happens when the vendor sells the property for a higher amount. And trust me, this word and this definition is going to be important later on. This entire situation happened 15 years ago, and it is one of the proudest moments of my life. My best friend and her husband have 5 kids together. They lived in an expensive city and rented an old 4-bedroom house for $400 per week. The house was very run down, with a disgusting kitchen and sink drains, but it was all they could afford at the time. Still, they made it work. The owner was a nice old lady who was extremely wealthy and very fond of my friend. She froze the rent for 5 years and promised to let them buy the house once they had saved enough to get a loan from the bank. Now, as she had helped other people in a similar way, they knew that they could trust her, and so they saved every cent that they could. It took them 5 years, but they finally told her that they were ready. But unfortunately, 2 days later, the nice old lady passed away, quite literally before anything was put in writing. Well, this is where the new owners step in, and they are the 4 children of this lady. Each one of them is extremely wealthy in their own right. I mean, they did inherit a huge portfolio of properties. When they first spoke to my friends, they assured them that the sale would still go through, but they would have to wait until probate had settled. Well, feeling confident, my friends started making some changes to the place. They started by stripping down the wallpaper, painting the walls, and making plans. Eventually and finally, the probate was settled, and the owners agreed to go ahead with the sale for the previous agreed price. My friends then applied for the loan, but much to their shock, it was refused. The owners had raised the asking price by $80,000 without telling my friends. And to make things even worse, the house would be put up on the open market. In 7 days, there would be an open house, and with the market the way it was, it would probably sell immediately. My friends were devastated. They might be able to borrow enough, but it would take longer than a week to get it. To make matters worse, property prices had soared recently, and rents had gone up a lot, while theirs had still been frozen. Not only were my friends going to struggle to get the money, but if the place was sold to someone else, and they were asked for a higher rent or be evicted, it would be nearly impossible to find an affordable place with more than 2 bedrooms. I was scared for my friends, but I was also incandescently angry. Those greedy jerks were some of the wealthiest people in the city. They were screwing over a struggling family for less than $20,000 each. They didn't need the money, it was pure greed, and it was totally obvious that they had always planned to do this. So, when my friends scrambled to come up with the money, I started plotting. I looked up advice on what helps to make a sale. We need to make the place as undesirable as possible without making my friends look like bad tenants. For starters, we moved all the furniture in from the walls, added some extra furniture, and borrowed ornaments and hung a load of motorcycle memorabilia on the walls. And we did this just to make the place feel more smaller. Also, my friend boiled a head of cabbage on the stove, and we sprayed ammonia around the front and back doors, because that way it'll smell like all the neighborhood cats have been marking their territory. We also poured 24 rotten eggs down the drain to make it smell like sewer gas. We then obtained a moldy old couch and dumped it in front of the neighbors across the road with their permission. We also started calling other friends for help. Anybody with a loud and crappy car was asked to do a few laps in front of the block during the open day. The street was unusually busy that day, and everyone we knew found a reason to drive by, so it was practically rush hour. We also called all of our mates out from the rugby club, and a big portion of our club are very large men. The next door neighbors set up a barbecue in their front yard, and we offered free food and cheap beer. Well, they came on motorcycles wearing the roughest gear they had, and there was definitely quite a crowd. Now, a lot of people showed up for the open day, and quite a few were in and out within minutes. One lady sat in her car and watched the party next door before completely driving away. Now, the one person who stayed any length of time was brave enough to start up a conversation with someone leaving the party. He asked if they were often there, and he was told that every couple of weeks or so, they have an after-party morning, and the party the night before was 3 doors up. The partygoers also helpfully mentioned the troublesome drains that are always getting blocked by the tree roots, and they cause the place to really stink. And after this potential buyer heard that, he left without making any kind of offer. So eventually, my friends were the only ones to make an offer. They still had to pay more than what they planned, but not as much as these greedy jerks wanted. My friends then signed the papers and paid the deposit that day. So when a brave buyer eventually stepped forward, forward and put an offer down for $30,000 more than my friends, there was nothing the owners can do about it, as there are strict anti-gazumping laws. And I really wish I could have been there in person to see the look on these owners' faces when they eventually found out. Wow, I love it when people get some solid revenge on people who are clearly very greedy. Like seriously, just look at the way they treated the original poster's friends. They were so looking forward to having this place to live in and to have a place of their own that they could buy. But instead, these crappy people tried to raise the price and essentially force your friends out on the street. Like that is so unacceptable, and it's honestly so ridiculous. So I personally love this kind of revenge because people like this, in my opinion, absolutely deserve it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My job is incompetent in a way that I've never seen before with any previous job I've ever worked. And after only working here for 2 weeks, I'm honestly considering walking out and never coming back in. Because at this point, I'm so frustrated that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, honestly, things at my job are a complete mess, and I really just need to talk it out. For starters, 2 tables came in and already they ran out of gumbo in the back. The customers had to wait 30 minutes for it, and these were coursed meals, so they had to eat all their other food and finally get 1 cup of gumbo at the end. And at another table, we had to give free appetizers for theirs. I mean, have we never heard of having any kind of prep? Then on a 3-top, I put in 2 taco dinners and a pasta dish. The kitchen then hands me 2 of their entrees, the taco and pasta, but we don't use trays and they have these weirdly shaped dishes, so it's only like 2 plates per trip. When I returned for the other tacos, they were nowhere to be found. I asked the assistant manager where they are, and he just looks at the ticket and goes, I don't know. And it's like, what are you talking about? Just read the tickets. Another time, I was having to pick things out of the salads because the kitchen just ignored all the modifications. I'm always having to ask them to change out sides that they got wrong, and having to ask them to switch sizes from cup to bowl because they got those wrong as well. Like seriously, can they not read? And before anyone would ask, the staff is fully English speaking. No one there even speaks Spanish, so it makes no sense how the Hispanic chefs from my other jobs can do literally everything perfectly, but these guys simply can't do it. And I was catching all of these things thankfully before I left the kitchen. Then we were out of literally everything drink-wise and a lot of our food. Oh, you want a very specific drink? Sorry, we don't have that either. Literally on some of the tables, there was only 1 person at each table who actually got what they initially wanted. If they wanted shrimp tacos, I would have to say to them, sorry, but we don't have any shrimp. And then the other servers would be like, you have to check to see what's out. And I'm like, yeah, but that list should have been like 1 to 3 items max, not 80% of the stupid menu. Don't talk at me like I'm the one who's unprepared here. Now here's the thing. I have only been there less than 2 weeks, but from day 1, I was kind of already suspicious about the place because they don't operate efficiently. There's not even an ice well behind the bar, nor is there even an ice maker. They buy bagged ice, which is just so stupid. And they have 3 sinks, yet they don't do the tri-sink method, and they only use 1 for soapy water and 1 of them for clean and no sanitizing. Even the shady club that I used to work at that illegally sold liquor used the tri-sink method with sanitizer. And on top of that, not 1 of the hand washing sinks has soap. None of them. If you want to wash your hands, you have to go to the bathrooms. And I don't even think they're washing their hands, as I saw the other server go straight from taking out the trash to a table. And that is seriously just so disgusting. Not to mention that I saw a mouse running around the dining room, literally right next to tables being used on my first day. I was very close to walking out today because, to be honest, it's just ridiculous how unprepared they are. And that really makes me look bad to customers. But not that it matters anyways, because we have a tip sharing system. It's honestly just one red flag after the other, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Wow, that job sounds awful, and if I was in your shoes, I would be looking for another job. That place does not sound like a good place to work. Like seriously, they have rats in the restaurant, they're never prepared with any of their food, no one's washing their hands, and everybody's getting everything wrong all the time. And I totally understand where you're coming from. Here you are on the front line trying to figure this stuff out, and it only makes you look bad. It doesn't reflect badly on the host or any of the chefs in the back. This literally only comes back to you because you're the most forward-facing customer service rep there is in the restaurant, and that is so unfair to you. You're not even asking a lot of them, you're just asking them to do their job, but they can't even do that, and that would honestly drive me crazy. But the biggest red flag for me is the fact that you've seen all of this with only working there for 2 weeks. Like, this is not something you want to see this early into a job. And in my opinion, I think this should be more than enough for you to try and find another job, because this place sounds like the absolute worst. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. choice. My best friend was a complete jerk on our vacation, and I'm honestly at such a loss on what to do about our friendship. Here's what happened. Okay, this happened about a month ago, but I'm still in disbelief about this and I need to rant. Basically, my friend, who we will call John, was invited to a family vacation when we were both teenagers, and he was a complete jerk the entire time, but I really want to know what everybody else would think. To begin, I had to wake him up, which is not too big of a deal, but it is a bit annoying. And then when we went kayaking, he fell asleep in the back and basically made me chauffeur him around the lake. And to me, this was also passable because it was early and I liked having the workout. But after we were done, this is what really started to anger me. We used to tandem kayak, so it was a bit heavy, so me and my mom had to both carry it up the rocky path while he carried the oars. He is smaller, but he left us behind and just waited at the top of the hill staring at us. When my mom pointed this out to me, it made me a bit mad, but this is the tip of the iceberg. On the final day, John made a very offhanded comment to my mom, and he complained how we didn't do something all day every day. And this comment really bothered me, my mom, and my dad especially, because he came for free. And that made me think of some other things that I glanced over, but we'll get to that in a bit. On the day that we had to get out, I again had to wake him up, which again, that's fine, but what wasn't okay was that he had his headphones on, he sat on the couch and was playing on his Nintendo Switch and didn't respond to anybody, and he did the bare minimum while only packing his stuff and only his stuff. At one point, my mom asked him if he wanted something to eat, but she got no response from him, even after repeating herself a second time. Now, my mom hates repeating herself, so this made her very mad. Now me, taking note of this, tried to pick up the slack in any way that I could. When we went outside to finish packing and throwing things away, he just stood there meandering about in his own little world, and when we got home, I had to open his door and snap him back to reality, only for him to then go inside, sit down, and go back to his own little world. I mean, he didn't even bring in his own stuff. And the cherry on top of everything is that he didn't say thank you, and neither did his dad. So obviously this is pretty bad as is, but trust me, it gets way worse. After he left, we unpacked, and at some point, my mom caught me in the kitchen, and the rant of the century took place. First of all, and most important, he was very, very rude to my mom. As I mentioned before, he ignored her regularly, but he would also interrupt her when she was talking to me and start to take over the conversation. And there's even more. At one point during the vacation, I played a little joke by putting one of his flip-flops on top of the fridge, which is harmless, right? Well, apparently that was a wrong thing for me to do. I then completely forgot about this flip-flop, and funny enough is that he lost his other one under the bed, and when he couldn't find the flip-flops on the last couple of days, we literally searched everywhere. My mom one day came in the room while I was in the shower and asked John if he looked under the bed, and he said yes, and my mom didn't think that he did, so she gets on the floor and looks under the bed, and there's one of the flip-flops. She then says, "You looked under the bed?" John nods his head, and my mom says, "Why don't you check again?" He then leans down, still on the bed, but she says, "No, get on the floor," with John doing so reluctantly. John then looks my mom dead in the eyes and says, "Oh, I didn't lift that." And for context, the sheets of the bed hung over the sides of the bed, so he didn't look under the bed. He just looked at the sheet and thought that that was looking. There were also smaller things that made us very mad. Like on day one, I noticed that he was a bit smelly. And sure, puberty is weird, so I decided to mention this in a polite way, but he just denied it, and I told him he was wrong. My mom also noticed it too, so we decided to run to the store and just get him a cheap thing of deodorant. But then he never used it once, and we think he took it, but we really are just not sure. John also packed his bags terribly. We went to the mountains, and it is the summer in the United States, and for that type of weather, you'd expect mostly short sleeves and shorts, and maybe 1 to 2 sets of warmer clothing just in case. We also told John's mom to bring waterwear, like swim trunks and shoes, and he did bring the trunks, but we had to buy him shoes, and we also had to buy him shoes because he only had his flip-flops. He didn't just not bring proper clothing, he also didn't bring his own shampoo, body wash, or washwear, like a washcloth or a loofah. John also regularly interrupted a joke story that I was telling, and he would constantly interrupt my train of thought and had the audacity to ask questions afterwards. He also told my mom to get more sweet tea on the second to last day. However, I think the true worst thing is his lack of hygiene. He had to be constantly reminded to shower, and then would get in the hot tub, which is gross, but I seriously don't understand how in your teenage years, you need to be reminded to constantly shower and brush your teeth. So honestly, I'm looking for some kind of opinion. I haven't even listed everything just to try and keep this lighter, but seriously, what do you think? Am I blowing this out of proportion? And how should I process my friendship moving forward? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, I think John is one of those people where, yeah, you took him on vacation, but this is the last time that is ever happening again. Like, this is a lesson learned that you could probably only figure out the hard way. Because I'm sure your family never anticipated that John would be this much of a mess. Like seriously, you guys are gonna be hiking and doing all kinds of like outdoor stuff, and he only shows up in flip-flops? Like seriously, how is that in any way, shape, or form a responsible way to handle things? So no, I don't think you blew this out of proportion or anything like that, and I think your assessment of John really is exactly as it is. He doesn't sound super reliable, and it's probably not someone you ever want to take on vacation again, because from the sounds of it, this does not sound like someone I would want to deal with for a second time. My parents make me feel worthless, and I'm now honestly dreading going back to America, because right now I'm so stressed out that I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm currently in Japan, returning tomorrow, and I'm already feeling like my life is going back to the dumpster the more I talk to my parents. The stress train begins with my parents already making me feel like a failure when I'm just looking for support. I've sacrificed so much for them, but it's still never enough. I was thinking of doing online classes to get a head start for next semester, but since I'm so close to graduation, there aren't many options left online for my advanced levels. So I asked my mom for assistance because she is a college advisor at a different school, but instead of actual help, she sent me some very belittling text messages. I said to her, I think I can handle 2 more classes because most of my classes are online this semester, and they honestly seem easy. Do you think you could help me find these classes online at different schools? My advisor said that they do not offer these online in the fall here. My mom responded by saying, this is why I was trying to get you to do more hours the past 2 years. So I said to her, I did 15 hours every semester since I started school, but okay, I guess never mind. My mom then left me on red. I understand I was rude, but I felt completely insulted by that. Will they ever understand what I've done to get where I'm at? I mean, I'm recovering dyslexic and extremely ADHD, and being where I am should be a miracle, but it's just never good enough. I went to community college to save money, and it was free where I went, while they let my sister go straight to a 4-year college. I took 15 hours every semester, and the minimum at my university is 9 hours. And I also did winter and summer classes. My sister failed the same class 4 times and others, while I've never failed a single class. I've had steady jobs and I've never been fired. I'm currently working full-time at the university to save money, and yet my sister just got fired from her 3rd job in 2 months. She can't make friends to find a roommate for college, so I offered for her to live with me, even though she's done terrible things to me. The only reason I'm doing this is to help my parents save some money. But despite all of this, we're seen as equally bad, and I'm considered lazy for not doing more. I'm being held at a completely different standard, and it's making me realize that being here in Japan with very limited contact has relieved my stress because I can use not contacting my family as a tangible excuse. I feel bad for feeling this way because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I think it's very nice of you to want to like help out your parents and like help them save money, but also you would be a fool for letting your sister live with you. Like seriously, she sounds like an absolute mess, and she does not sound like she has her life together in the slightest. She's been fired multiple times in like 2 months, she's failing her classes, and she just literally is not taking any of this seriously. And yet on the other hand, you are doing all these good things despite having so many setbacks in front of you. And with that, I think it would be a really bad idea to let your sister into your home, because the way she's acting, in my opinion, is very irresponsible, and you do not deserve to go down the same path that she did, all for the sake of trying to help your parents save money. Am I the jerk for not checking on my friend after she suddenly dropped out of my wedding party? Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I was very excited to ask 2 of my friends who I see the most to be in my wedding party. Let's call them Lisa and Shelly. They both said yes, and it was great. But 3 months in, about 4 months before the wedding, Lisa said that she couldn't afford it and has dropped out. And I said it was alright, but I was a bit hurt. I had so far asked them to buy a dress that was maybe about $100 to $120, and I had paid for drinks and food at the one meeting we've had. Well, Lisa and her boyfriend both work and make decent money, and they pay low rent since I rented them a suite as I manage a building, so I was confused that they couldn't afford it. Shelly isn't working much, so I said I could help her pay for her dress if it would help. After Lisa dropped out, I asked Shelly if she was still okay doing it. Her and Lisa are very close, and also I just wanted to be sure. Well, she said that she did, and that was great. That same night on our group chat with the 4 other girls in the wedding party, Shelly started texting that it was crazy that I expected them to pay $100 for a dress to be in the wedding, and then she dropped out of the chat. I was really hurt, and I felt very confused why 2 of my closest friends, who I've always been there for, wouldn't step up to be a part of my wedding when I would do anything to be in theirs if they asked me. Now, as my wedding isn't far, I needed to replace one of them soon, and I knew the perfect girl to do it. So I asked her the next day so that she could have time to prepare. She was so happy, and she said that she would be honored. I had wanted to ask her, but we already had 6 people each, so I was happy that I got the chance to after what had just happened. It honestly made the hurt of my 2 best friends dropping out a little bit less. I didn't need to replace Lisa because her boyfriend was in the wedding party too, so they both just dropped out. After about a week of nothing from Shelly, I get a text message saying how awful it is that I didn't check on her seeing how she was doing, or to make sure that she didn't want to do it before I replaced her. And I am honestly absolutely floored that she is angry with me about this. She has since sent me text messages saying how hurt she is and that she doesn't know me anymore, and has started saying bad things about my fiance to people they both know. And after this, I don't even know if their friendship is worth salvaging. So am I the worst friend ever? Or is it normal that I'm thinking maybe she never was my friend? What should I do? Wow, the fact that they dropped out over a $100 dress and then tried to be like, wow, you didn't even check on me. Like seriously, do they not realize the original poster is getting ready for a wedding? Like they don't have time to coddle all your feelings. Like that is such a selfish way of acting, and honestly, the original poster doesn't deserve that. So no, you're definitely not the jerk in this situation, because your friend is acting incredibly spoiled and very entitled, and you do not deserve that in the slightest. My toxic entitled teacher treats all of his students like garbage, all because we don't know the material that he's trying to teach us. And after watching students drop out of his class and their major because of him, me and my remaining classmates decided to get some revenge, resulting in this guy getting reprimanded by the administration and eventually getting fired. Here's what happened. So this happened in the early 2000s, in my junior year of high school. The district had just built the 3rd high school in our city, and most of the teachers were new, and the band director was one of those new hires. He was qualified for the job, but had 0 people skills and was extremely abrasive towards students. He had previously taught university and could not wrap his head around the fact that high school students are not college-level music majors who live in practice rooms and write symphonies in their sleep. His normal behavior consisted of berating students for not knowing university-level curriculum, talking down to everyone about how he cannot understand why they are so incompetent, and stopping rehearsals to go on long tangents about things that had nothing to do with music. Every day, at least 2 to 3 students would leave class in tears. We complained to the higher-ups, and they repeatedly brushed us off. He made students hate attending music classes, and many dropped band and orchestra as a result. One of the classes he taught was supposed to be Intro to Music Theory. For those who don't know music, this would be a class that should be typically teaching things like different types of chords, the definition of music symbols, the logic behind key changes, and so on. At the first class of the year, there were about 25 kids enrolled. Most of these were music and drama kids who wanted to be teachers or performers in the arts one day. On the first day, he handed us a quiz because he wanted to see how much we knew, and I think there were maybe 3 to 5 kids who were able to attempt a single question on the quiz, but no one got a single answer right. That's how advanced it was. Imagine signing up for what you thought is a basic pre-algebra class and instead walking into advanced calculus. This teacher then spent the entire class period berating us for not being prepared when no one could even attempt his quiz. But we told him this is an intro class. None of us have learned anything like this before. And his response was to say, "Really? I thought this was an advanced class." The next class period, there were maybe 15 kids in total that were enrolled, and he did the same thing. He asked us to perform something that we cannot even understand, and then berated us for not being prepared. At every class, he would just say, "I thought you were all musicians. This is supposed to be an advanced class." By the end of the second week, there were only 6 students left enrolled in this class, including myself. He softened up slightly on those who stayed and seemed to think that we were his prize students and that this was his class of elites. But in truth, we all thought he was insane and cruel. But the 6 of us had sufficient music backgrounds, and we had enough experience to understand a fraction of his lessons. And without the bell curve, we all would have failed his class. A few months go by, and we're at the end of the first semester. By now, every student connected to music in the school hated this guy, and repeated complaints had done nothing to fix the problem. The admins filed away every complaint, but never did anything more than remind him that he's supposed to be more kind to students. Well, he changes nothing and still berates students and makes them cry. So when it comes to the final exam for his theory class, he decides that he wants to give it to us early so that the day the final is supposed to be scheduled, we can all have a class party instead. Now, of the 6 of us left, 4 of us have the same period after his class together as well, and that class is AP English, and we were all prepping for the AP test, but we had no problem with a class party in music right before the AP prep exam, so we didn't complain. explain. The day comes for our music final exam, and after we finish the test, he tells us that for our class party, he wants to take us all to breakfast at a new IHOP that opened 20 minutes away. We then try to tell him all the issues with his plans. We are not allowed to leave campus without permission slips, and this was a closed campus policy due to an incident where a student who left campus got hit by a car. Also, we will not get back in time for second period, which by the way was a final exam, and he doesn't have permission to remove us from the campus. What if there's an emergency and we are unaccounted for because we aren't even at the school? His solution was to tell us that after the start of class on our final class day, he would be going to IHOP, and if we wanted to join him, then that's our choice. But if we didn't, we would have to stay in the classroom and not bring attention to the fact that there was no class and no teacher. Well, without talking about it to each other, the six of us saw this as an opportunity to finally get the administration's attention to the complete disregard that this teacher had for rules and policies. We made sure to inform our English teacher that we might be late to class on the day of the final due to a class field trip for music theory. She was irritated and reminded us that this final was very important and that she would not give us extra time if we came in late. But we told her that we understood, and we gave her details about where we would be and what we would be doing and who we would be with. And she just said that she still expected us to be in her class. On the day of the final, we all went to IHOP, and it took forever for us to get there because of construction, and it took forever to get our food because the restaurant was newly opened and had a large number of customers. We eventually got back to the school halfway through our second period class, and when we got back, the admins were waiting for us as well as security. My English teacher had called the front office to complain that 4 of her best students were missing and that she was fairly certain that we weren't even on campus. Well, the admins had checked attendance and they had seen that we were all marked present this morning and that they had searched the entire school looking for our class. Eventually, the 4 of us walked into our English final to a livid teacher. Now, we knew that she was pissed at us, but she couldn't punish us beyond saying that we had the same remaining time as the rest of the class. Now, none of us did as well in the final as we could have if we had the full 87 minutes, but we were doing well enough in the class already that the lesser marks didn't affect our overall grade too much. The band teacher also had a private reprimand that was so loud the entire school could hear it. He was confused as to why the administration was so upset that he took minor children off campus without permission or notice, and without proper school transportation or even for a good reason. He then stayed with his usual attitude, but this time towards the administration. He said, "Why are you guys so incompetent about this? They're old enough to drive, what's the problem?" The English teacher, who I actually adore and was one of the best teachers I've ever had, absolutely went mama bear on the administration about how they could continue to employ someone who disrespects the other teachers so much as to deprive his students of their final exams and put them in potentially dangerous circumstances. He told us to drive ourselves to the restaurant, and any accidents or medical issues would have been the school's fault. Well, this guy was fired later that day, and many of the students had a gleeful but confused reaction since the 6 of us weren't talking to anyone about it. All most people knew was that this tyrant of a teacher was finally gone. We didn't spread the story very much of how it happened because we still fear being reprimanded for our involvement since he technically gave us a choice to go with him or stay. But I always smiled when people gossiped about what the final straw was that got him fired because I'm so glad that I played a role in him getting exactly what he deserved. Wow, that guy is a complete moron. He not only came into this high school and was like, okay, you're gonna learn music the hard way, and not only did very little to teach you guys any of the material, but also treated you like garbage because you didn't know the material. Why would you too, by the way? It honestly makes no sense to me when teachers, especially in high school, treat their students like garbage and act as if, oh yeah, you should know all of this already. If that was the case, then why would I ever be taking your class? Wouldn't I try to test out of it or go to something more advanced or prove that I know the information more? This guy sounds like an absolutely obnoxious jerk. So truly, I love the fact that you guys grouped together and you silently agree that this guy absolutely needs to go down because the way he treated you and your other classmates was completely unacceptable. And in my opinion, he absolutely deserved to get fired. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not ordering any food? Also that I could avoid 2 friends in my friend group who always try to mooch off of everybody else. Here's what happened. I'm a 27-year-old male, and I've been a part of a small friend group of around 8 people ever since college. For some background information, 2 people from the group, who we will call Sarah and Greg, are absolute leeches. For example, if you're going out for lunch, expect them to order the most most expensive item on the menu, then feed you some kind of sob story about their finances, and then dump half the bill on you. Last weekend, another friend who we will call Dan, who's also one of the people from the group, told me about a casual dinner that they had. I told him how if Susan or Greg were there, I would not be able to come along. He tells me that they would be there, but I should just put my opinions aside and come just once. And honestly, this is kind of where I might be the jerk. I agreed with him and I told him that I would be there, and I show up and we all get to talking. Everyone began putting in their orders, and most of them spent about $40 in total, and there were only about 6 people there. When it gets to Susan and Greg, they both order expensive dishes at around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just picked up the menu and pointed at a $4 Miller Lite, and then I sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I had not ordered anything, and all I said was that I had lost my appetite. Then the other 2 friends got up as well to cancel their orders and just have some drinks. After the main courses came out, I saw Susan and Greg picking at their food. The waiter then brings over the check. Greg, as to be expected, then grabs the waiter and asked him to split the check 6 ways. Well, when he tried that, I stand up and I correct him, saying the check was to be split 3 ways. Greg looks at me confused and asks me why, since we always split the bill. Well, I reminded him that 3 of us had not eaten any food, so we would just be paying for our drinks. So basically, at the end of the night, Dan, who probably ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $146 check at the end of the night. And I swear I saw his jaw drop when he picked up that receipt. I then slid a $10 bill towards the check, I said goodbye to everybody, and then I walked out. The next morning, I found my phone full of text messages from Greg and Susan telling me that I was a jerk for not ordering any food and forcing them to pay more than they had accounted for. And I honestly laughed, because the steaks alone were more than what they had paid, but to each their own, right? I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could have just not come along instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. Now, just to clarify a few things, I will say that 90% of restaurants where I live don't do separate checks, and they might separate the bill for you if you're lucky. Also, Dan could have easily asked Greg and Sarah to transfer him the money if he really wanted to, but he's always been about helping them through their financial hardship, even though they're just using him and keep dragging me into it. In retrospect, I will admit that what I did was immature, but I'm tired of being forced to play along. It is his money, and if he wants to spend it on them, that's fine, but I am not also going to be paying for them. And I will say that Dan is a really good friend of mine, even though he's kind of blind to what's going on. I was just trying to get him to see what kind of people he was helping. And sure, maybe it was just a bit petty, but am I the jerk for what I did to my friend? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, for starters, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because truly, Susan and Greg really are leeches. Who in their right mind would be like, okay, time to order like the most expensive item on the menu, and then expect everybody to split it up 6 ways? Like, why on earth should I have to pay for your garbage? That is ridiculous, and that really is not fair for me. And the fact that any of these people are trying to blame you for this all going down in the way that it did, in my opinion, shows not only how delusional Dan is, but also how selfish and obnoxious Susan and Greg are, forever assuming that you should pay for everything in their life. Am I the jerk for telling my neighbor to grow up and get a life after he got so mad that I was painting my house a color that he didn't like? Because right now he is talking some mad garbage about me behind my back, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I bought a house in a community without a homeowners association, and I did that because I wanted my home to be my home, and that includes making it look the way that I want. I also chose a neighborhood that was already fun, full of colorful houses, instead of just plain earth tones. I finally got to the point where I could repaint my house, and I picked a soft peachy color with sage blue and soft and dark pink accents. It was fun and colorful without being way too out there. I think if you Google colors blue sage peach, you might see a similar palette. Well, my neighbor, who we will call Paul, absolutely hates it and has been complaining ever since we started the project. He also made his opinions known that he hates our front lawn. And for reference, our lawn has some wildflowers and sunflowers, as well as a fun garden flag and a little free library. But each and every time, I've told him that I don't care. Truly, I literally don't. And I've suggested a few times that maybe he would be happier in an HOA community that has control over everything and forces people into having earth-toned houses. Well, Paul got angry when I suggested that and said that he's lived in his home for 15 years and shouldn't have to move. So I told him, okay, well, you'll just have to learn to live with a little bit of color. So last weekend, I was putting in pavers that my niece and I had painted together. They're all things like ladybugs, turtles, birds, and anything with fun colors. I adore them, and my my niece is so excited that she gets to be a part of my home. Well, Paul came over to complain yet again, saying that it was an eyesore, and my niece was here, so I just told him it's time for you to grow up and get over what I'm doing with my house. When I said that, he got even pissier and told me that I have no right to talk to him this way. Do you know who you're talking to right now? I then just said straight up, get out of my life. If he really has so much free time to complain about a colorful house, then maybe he should get a hobby. He then stormed off and called me a nasty piece of work, and my niece was cracking up on the side. For the record, no one in my family is uptight, and we really just don't care about cursing. I know some people still clutch their pearls over it around kids, but I'm sure that she says way worse. Anyways, one of the other neighbors came to tell me that he's been flapping his yap about how disrespectful I am for talking to him like that. She told me that she knows he's a pain, but that he has been in the neighborhood forever, and it is worth being nice to him. But honestly, I don't know. Is telling him to get a life that big of a deal? Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you did anything wrong. This guy is literally up in your business trying to tell you how to live in your house. Because you said it yourself, you literally bought a house so you could make it your own. And that includes making it a colorful house in some kind of way. And it doesn't seem like you're doing anything super extreme. Like it really is just something to make your house pop and stand out in a way that is not disrespectful of everybody else. So for him to come up to your door and be like, I don't like it, you better stop it. Like that is really obnoxious and just super annoying. And when it comes to the other lady stepping in and being like, hey, I know he could be uptight, but like seriously, you need to apologize. He's been in the neighborhood for a while. It's worth being nice to him. Like I can understand where she's coming from, but also why in the world is she getting involved in this? Like that is super obnoxious and I just can't stand when people do that. She's basically trying to take a secret side to this and try to convince you to come back and like, I don't know, taper down what you're trying to do. And I just don't think you should have to do that for a second. So no, I don't blame you for telling this guy to get a life and get lost, because the way he was acting towards you and your family, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for ignoring my friend's phone calls after she invited herself, her family, and some of her friends to my home? Also, we could have an impromptu barbecue without my permission. Because right now, I kind of feel awful. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my friend is having a hard time with her spouse and really needs someone to be there for her while they work through their issues. We only just recently reconnected after not speaking for 4 years. But now, every time she calls, she asks me what I'm doing for the day or at that moment. And then she invites herself, her family of 4, and some of her friends over to my house. And it's honestly starting to wear me out. For example, Friday was her spouse's birthday, and on Monday, she told me her plan was to take him to dinner. Well, she then calls me Friday morning asking me what I was doing. I told her I was watching a movie on my couch. And then she says to me, I know it's last minute, but I want to come over and have a barbecue at your house. She said the kids could play together and we could hang out and have some drinks. Now, I hesitated initially, and then I told her that I really didn't have a lot of meat here, nor was my home company ready. She responded that she would go grab some food and do all of the cooking. So I said okay. I cleaned up a bit and then I received a second call. She excitedly told me that she invited her guy friend and he may bring a friend for me to talk to, and a female friend of hers was also coming. And I was so shocked that she was trying to throw a party and not just come over and hang out with just her family like she implied during the first call. Her family was already 4 people that I was not expecting, which would have made a total of 8 people, including my own children. And I've only met 2 of the 3 people that she invited. She did not even ask if she could invite anyone else to my home or give out my address. Well, luckily I got a call on the other line and I told her that I would call her back. 2 hours passed by and she called me repeatedly. And that's when I decided to text her that something came up and that I cannot host a party for her husband. And after I said that, I didn't even get a response. I waited another 2 hours and then I called her to see how the barbecue party was going. But she told me that she didn't even have a barbecue party. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is going on? I then asked her why she didn't ask her friends to come to her apartment since she has her own barbecue grill, and why she didn't at least go out to dinner like she planned originally. Well, she literally didn't even answer the first question, but instead she said she didn't want to spend a lot of money going out to eat. So am I the jerk for making up an excuse to end the call and then ignoring all of her repeated calls just to confirm? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and honestly, it sounds like your friend was using you instead of trying to, like, I don't know, spend time with you. Like, if anything, she just sounds like a parasite and she was trying to leech off of you having your own place. And it's so funny to me that the second you don't comply with her orders, she suddenly goes silent and can't respond to you about anything. And it's also funny that she's like, oh, I don't have a lot of money to spend. And yet she was willing to buy all this meat and all this stuff and then show up to your house and have a barbecue. It seems really contradictory in my opinion, and I just don't think she's being honest. So no, in my opinion, I don't blame you for not answering the calls, as well as making up an excuse just to get out of the situation. Because this honestly sounds obnoxious, and I would not want to deal with this if I was in your shoes in the slightest. An entitled old couple interrupts our private viewing of a movie that we scheduled, demanding that we move out of the way, as we were apparently in their seats. And I've honestly never met anybody more entitled in my life. Here's what happened. So at the small town where my college was located, there was a small independent movie theater. And this movie theater had the option to rent out one of their screens for a private showing, and that's what me and my friends did for a birthday. So we've settled in, and the movie has been going on for about 10 minutes when we hear the doors open at the back of the theater, and in walks this couple that appears to be in their 60s or 70s. They walk up the stairs right over to our row, and without hesitation tell us that we're sitting in their seats. Now, we try to tell them politely that they're just mistaken, but we can't even finish our sentences before the guy explodes and starts screaming at us to get out of their seats and started calling us all sorts of insults. This goes on back and forth for a minute or so until we're finally able to ask him amidst all of his screaming if he noticed the giant sign in front of the door that said private event, which causes him to stand there fuming silently for a moment before literally stomping his foot like a toddler and storming out of the theater with his wife, making sure to slam the door as he walks out. Now, we thought that was the end of it, but about 15 minutes later, the movie stops and the lights come on, and the manager of the theater comes in saying that someone told him that we were doing illegal substances and destroying the seats. But after finally convincing him that that was in fact not what we were doing, he eventually starts the movie again and everything else went smoothly. But I will honestly never forget the way I was treated by this old entitled couple. This story is crazy to me. Imagine grabbing a private showing for a movie that you and your friends set up, only to then have this old grumpy couple come in and be like, "You're sitting in our seats." Not only did they not read the sign on the front of the door, they were also completely unwilling to listen to anything that you guys were trying to tell them. I'm sure this could have been like easily resolved pretty quickly, but these morons came in incredibly aggressive and like ready for a fight for no good reason. And then the icing on the cake when they're finally proven wrong is that they lie and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're doing illegal substances in there and they're destroying the seats, go get them." Like, there's no reason to act like that. Just get up and go to the other theater and watch the movie you're here to see. So truly, that is some absolutely horrible behavior, because the original poster and their friends definitely did not deserve that. My entitled old neighbor is constantly stealing my mail and taking my packages, claiming that he's just trying to help me out anytime he sees it on my front porch, while also refusing to admit that he stole anything from me. But after finally catching him on camera in the act, after I told him to stay away from me, I finally have solid evidence proving that he's been stealing my packages, forcing me to call the police. Here's what happened. So I'm a single female living in an apartment complex, and it's just me and my dog. My neighbor across the hall is a creepy old grumpy man that I've never liked since the day he moved in. He keeps junk outside of his door, doesn't control the people that come over to his house, he throws food and trash into the common areas, and once even tried swinging at my dog with his cane. He's always made me feel extremely uncomfortable around him since day one. I have complained and complained to management, but they do nothing about him. He plays dumb when confronted and then goes back to doing whatever it was. About a year ago, he started taking my packages. I would come home to no package and have to wait for him to appear to get my stuff. Constantly, I told him to leave my packages alone, and he always says that he's just trying to help me out. Now, it's important to note that I have never had a package stolen in this building ever. I have had them delivered to the wrong address, but never stolen, and this went back and forth for a full year. He would even take them when I was home, and I literally opened my door one day to collect my package, only to then see him nearly bolting out of his apartment to get it. When he saw me, he would just say, "Oh, you're home," and then go back inside. Eventually, I had enough and I decided to buy a camera, and the camera seemed to keep him away as he doesn't like it. Last week, I was expecting a book to be delivered. The mailman drops it off, waves to the camera, and then leaves. But then this guy opens his door, he stares at my package for several minutes before trying to take it into his apartment. I then got on the intercom and I yelled at him to put my stuff down, which thankfully he decides to drop it. Well, no more than 10 minutes later, he comes back out and takes the package again. But at this point, I decided that I had definitely had enough, because that's when I decided to get off work early, come home straight away, and call the police. The officer who came out watched the video I recorded and went over to talk to my neighbor, and it was the same excuse as always, him claiming that he was just trying to be helpful. But here's the thing, I never asked him to start taking my packages. The officer then gave him a warning warning, saying that if he took anything else from my door, I could press charges against him and he would be arrested. Well, this guy was super pissed off. My camera also records audio, and I could hear him complaining to his niece that I didn't need to call the cops, and again that he was just looking out for me. And you know what? I would feel safer with a tiger following me in the woods than dealing with this guy as one of my neighbors. Yeah, this guy was clearly stealing your mail, and there's just no good excuse for that. Him being like, oh, I'm just trying to help out, I'm just trying to look out for you. It's like, no buddy, you're over here trying to steal her mail, which by the way, that's a federal crime. You can't just do that. That like seriously is so messed up. Like if you're not aware or if you're not from the United States of America, if you steal somebody's mail and take it from them without their permission, that is a serious crime. Like that is really not okay. So I'm kind of surprised that the original poster hasn't taken this a lot further. There is literal video evidence of this guy stealing your mail all the time, as well as him literally admitting it over recording that he's doing that on purpose, that he has an agenda despite the fact that he's like, oh yeah, I'm just trying to help out. Like that's insane in my opinion, and there's literally no good excuse for that. Because seriously, the barrier of entry for this is so low. All he has to do is not take your packages and then bam, he's right there and it's no problem. But this guy literally is targeting you and going out of his way to take your stuff. And in my opinion, that kind of behavior absolutely should be punished. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen makes my life a living nightmare after I was forced to sit in the middle seat on an airplane after being placed on standby. And I'm honestly so appalled by this lady's behavior, and I seriously cannot believe the way that she acted. Here's what happened. I'm a 23-year-old female, and I don't really know the ages of the couple in the story, but they seem to be in their late 20s or early 30s. Now, this flight was a 5-hour flight, and I always pay extra and pick my seat in advance. However, due to a medical emergency on a flight from earlier in the day, I was placed on standby because the people who got displaced from that flight were also placed on our flight since it was the next one headed to the same location. Fortunately, towards the end of boarding, my name ended up being called. I got lucky and was able to get on this flight because I think they switched to a bigger plane and didn't have to instead wait for the next flight. Now, on this new flight, my seat ended up being the middle seat in a row of 3. When I got to my row, the man and woman were chatting and sharing a snack, and it was obvious that they were together. I mentioned to the man who was in the aisle that I'm in the middle seat, and he got up to let me in. I asked them if they would prefer to sit together, and I said that I'm totally okay doing that, and that they can pick the seats. Well, the woman almost immediately reacted rudely to this. She said something like, well, you're not supposed to be sitting here anyways. I explained the situation, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure everyone on the plane was aware of this, as there was an announcement and some rearranging had happened. I then offered to show her my new ticket, as it did show my seat number on it. She flicked her hand at my ticket and made a disgusting sound. So I offered again. If they want to sit together, I'm more than willing to move, to which she just didn't even reply. Her partner said it's okay and seemed kinder between the two of them. So I sat down, and he just made some small talk about how the plane must be so full. Well, this woman didn't wait long and eventually interrupted us. She asked me, did you use one of those third-party websites to book your flight? It is so frustrating when people cheap out to inconvenience others. But I told her that I booked directly, and the only reason I got placed on standby along with many other people was due to the medical emergency that happened on another flight. I mean, none of us got to choose our seats. She then asked me if I paid for seat selection, which I told her I definitely did. And by this point, I was so done with her attitude. So I just put my headphones on and attempted to do my own thing. Well, this woman, for the remaining 4 hours, kept reaching over me and tapping her partner and trying to talk to him in a way that was super intrusive to me, being stuck between them. I could tell even her partner was trying to engage less, also that she would hopefully stop, but she didn't. And the entire time, she acted like I was the problem in this scenario. Well, the unforeseen part of this aside, I think they tried to pull that tactic where they don't get to sit together on purpose, leaving the middle seat empty, hoping that no one will sit between them. But on full flights, which most flights are full nowadays, it simply doesn't work. And even so, it is definitely not the other person's fault. Wow, this entitled Karen really is the definition of stupid and entitled. If she really wanted to sit with her partner, literally all she had to do was move over. And if she didn't want to move, then easily just move the partner to the middle seat and let the original poster sit in the aisle. Then you don't have to reach over and be a nuisance and try to blame the person in the middle seat for even getting the middle seat. Like, how awfully entitled and stupid do you have to be to not only make somebody's life a living nightmare for picking the middle seat, which by the way, it's already a nightmare, but then to try and blame it on them for being cheap or somehow like working the system. Like, what in the world world is wrong with this lady? This isn't your fault and you didn't ask to sit between them. And you even offered a solution where it's like, okay, you two can sit together and I'll just be over here. But this Karen's like, no, I don't even want that. She even goes as far as like slapping the ticket in your hand. Like seriously, what a brat. If she didn't want to have some problems with you sitting there, then maybe next time choose to sit together or at least agree to switch seats from the beginning. Because this attitude for 4 hours was completely unnecessary and you did not deserve that in the slightest. iPad kids literally terrify me at my restaurant that I work at, as they are quite literally some of the worst people I have to deal with on a daily basis. And I'm honestly so sick of it and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, I work as a server and it's not a high-end place, but it is decent, meaning that we don't have a lot of kids on average due to us having an incredibly limited menu and no kids menu in the first place. So when kids do come into our restaurant, the front of house dies just a little bit inside. When I tell you these kids nowadays are monsters and that these parents are delusional and that it's depressing, I honestly mean it. For example, I had a table the other day of 2 adults and 3 kids, and I've seriously never seen so much chaos take over a restaurant. iPads were being thrown around, plates being purposefully dropped on the ground, the amount of screaming and running around causing damage was just too much to handle. Not to mention, one of the other servers had a little girl at their table that when her iPad got taken away, she started lighting the cutlery on fire from the candle on the table and decided to burn her mom with it as well. I've even had kids scream at me because our restaurant doesn't have Wi-Fi. We're talking like 9 to 13-year-olds. Like this new generation is absolutely cooked. So without a doubt, please leave your annoying, unmannered, ignorant iPad kid at home and don't bring your untrained child into a restaurant that literally isn't McDonald's. Also, yes, when your child is screaming and running around the restaurant or so glued to their iPad screen that when you think your kid is grown up and can order themselves, but still can't form a sentence at 12 years old. And yes, the whole staff is judging you and laughing at you and making fun of you and absolutely talking garbage about you. Because trust me, some therapist in the future is going to make a lot of money off of all the damage that you're currently causing. Yeah, I completely agree with the original poster on this one. iPad kids are literally the worst, and they seriously are like a breed of their own. Now, I'm not implying that adults are not addicted to their phones and they're not on it all the time. Like that happens all the time, and I completely think that's still a problem. But when you hand that to a child who is not fully developed and give them a device that literally is endless entertainment, all without any kind of like regulation or any kind of monitoring, like that is literally just a recipe for disaster for everybody around you. So truly, I feel for the original poster because I feel the exact same way. And parents who do that, in my opinion, are failing their kids and they're only causing problems in the future. Am I the jerk for not giving my one sister who eloped as generous of a gift as my sister who had a traditional wedding? Because right now, my sister who eloped is very upset with me. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my parents had me when they were really young. They are still together now and had 2 more kids, my sister Katie and Jess later on. Katie and Jess are not their real names. Now, I'm about 17 years older than the both of them respectively, so because of the age gap, we didn't really grow up together, and sometimes I feel more like an uncle than an older brother to them. I've been fortunate in my career to do relatively well, and I've typically been pretty generous with them when it comes to things like birthdays, Christmases, and graduations. My sister Katie got married 2 summers ago and had your typical traditional wedding. I would guess maybe about 125 people were there, and it honestly was very nice, but definitely not cheap. I don't know how much they spent, but I know my parents and her husbands were only able to contribute for about half the cost. The rest was my sister and her husband paying for it. They were super cool and let me and my wife bring our 2 kids, even though I later found out the venue charged the same amount for kids as adults for the food and everything else. It meant a lot, and I didn't want their inclusion to be a burden, so my wife and I gifted them $500 as a wedding present to cover our plates plus a little bit extra. Now, my sister Jess has always been more low-key. When she got engaged, she told us all that she would likely elope, and nobody tried to convince her otherwise because it made sense for them. They are not flashy and have always seemed pretty frugal, and they are definitely not the type to throw a big wedding costing tens of thousands of dollars. Well, they announced a couple of weeks ago that they eloped in the mountains with just them and the necessary witness, and I was happy for them, and I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. I've been to enough weddings that I don't have any kind of fear of missing out. I'm just happy they had what they felt was right for them. Now, since they didn't have a wedding, I didn't think to get them a wedding present because, you know, they didn't have a wedding. But they did just go under contract on their first home together, so my wife and I got them a $100 gift card to Home Depot. I remember when I first bought my first home, there were a lot of home improvement stuff, and I made like 100 trips there, so I thought it would be a nice gift. Well, apparently she asked Katie what she got for their wedding, and she told them, and now she felt a certain way about our gift to them. She made a comment about feeling like their marriage wasn't respected enough because they didn't throw a big party, and then said that it felt like I was showing favoritism. So I told her that I have Katie more because she hosted my whole family, and I know how expensive that is, having paid for my own wedding. Jess then just kind of rolled her eyes and walked away after that interaction, and we haven't talked about it ever since. And that was this past Sunday. Now, I thought it would be understood that the situations were just different, and it is unreasonable to expect the same generosity when you don't give any generosity, such as hosting an event or even feeding people. They didn't have a traditional wedding, and they didn't invite us to celebrate with them. So am I the jerk for not being as generous with my gift to my sister, all because they didn't have a traditional wedding? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I think it's really weird that Jess is trying to compare the two weddings. Like, that is super inappropriate because literally she chose to get eloped, not you. Nobody else forced that upon her. She didn't want to have any kind of celebration. She didn't want anybody else there except the necessary witness, and she didn't tell anybody in advance, so like, how can anyone be expected to get anything for them? Not to mention that Katie and her husband spent all this money on this dinner and had all these things set up, including your kids, which was an extra cost. So it does kind of make sense that you would spend just a little bit more money on her and only about a fifth of that on your other sister who didn't even have a wedding. Like, I don't know. I just don't think the two situations can be compared. And for Jess to be like, wow, you gave her $500, but I only got $100. Like, that is super selfish, and in my opinion, it is incredibly inappropriate for her to compare the two of their weddings. Am I the jerk for the way I handled my father-in-law after he tried to take full control over the house that we were trying to renovate? Here's what happened. So my father-in-law is a generous man, but has what he refers to as an a-hole gene, meaning that he doesn't stop to consider what anyone else wants in many situations. Since my husband and I have been living with my husband's brother, my father-in-law decided that when the neighbor's house went on the market for a steal, he would buy us the house. After consulting with his financial planner, the decision was made to have both my father-in-law and my husband on the title and deed to the house. We would pay all taxes and utilities, and when my father-in-law passes away, my husband would inherit the house. Well, here's where it gets very messy. The house needs a lot of work. Originally, my husband and I were going to be responsible for improvements and repairs. So I started meeting with contractors and getting estimates for the work. My husband doesn't know much about home repair or renovation, and I do, as my family has renovated multiple homes. So he's been letting me handle all of the work with the contractors. But even so, my father-in-law will not speak directly to me about anything related to the house, meaning that my poor husband has to play messenger, telling me what his dad wants to do, then telling his dad that I've already got it handled and I want to do something different. The final straw came today when my husband relayed to me that his dad has said that any permanent changes to the house that cost more than $5,000 has to be approved by him. Even if we're paying for them, he wants to sign off on any and all decisions, including tile colors, light fixtures, etc. So I forwarded all my communication with the contractor that we'd chosen, but haven't signed anything with yet, and said that if he wants to make the decisions, then he can make all of the decisions. He will own the house, and we will sign a rental lease when the work is done. He'll have to pass city inspections for rental units and abide by all state and local rental law. Well, now he's mad, saying that I'm ungrateful, selfish, and controlling. And at this point, I don't even want the house anymore. I'm ready to take the cat and go stay with my brother, but I don't actually want to leave my husband. I'm just sick of catering to his dad's whims. One day later, I have finally read through all of your comments, and I didn't really reply to most of them. I realize how incredibly privileged we are to be in this position, and I never had any intention of doing any work on the house without my father-in-law's approval, but we've already discussed what we're going to do, and he agreed that I should go ahead and find a contractor. But then he changed the rules. So I had dinner with my mother-in-law last night to commiserate about what a butthead he can be. And for reference, my mother-in-law definitely divorced my father-in-law. And it's then that she gave me some good advice on dealing with him. The bottom line is that we are not putting a single cent into a home unless we both have a legal stake in it. And if that can't happen, then trust me, nothing's gonna get done. So am I the jerk for the way that I handled this? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it sounds like your father-in-law is super controlling. Like, this guy literally didn't buy this house for you at all. He only bought it for himself and his son. Like, literally, you are not involved in this equation at all. And that is crazy to me. Like, that really is so inappropriate. Like, this probably was just a ploy for him to control you and your husband for the rest of his life. Because sure, let's say you do fix up the house, and maybe you do move into it and have some kind of agreement. He could then overnight start start making these weird rules about what you can and can't do and try to enforce his will over you and your husband. Like, that is crazy to me, and there's really no good excuse for that. And I think there definitely needs to be a conversation with your husband for not standing up for you in the first place. Like, why was he just so willing to go along with this without being like, wait a second, why does my wife not have any cut in this? Because out of everybody, it seems like you knew exactly what you were doing. So for you to not even be considered in the title of this house, in my opinion, is incredibly insulting. Am I the jerk for asking my parents to stop telling people that I'm in the hospital, as I feel like they're violating my privacy in a way that I do not appreciate? Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I'm currently pregnant and have been admitted to the hospital a few days ago for a suspected clot in my lung following severe chest pain, and I am still in the hospital right now. A few weeks ago, my wonderful maternal grandfather passed away from cancer, and we are obviously, as a family, still very upset. 2.5 years ago, I was in a car accident. I broke my back in 3 places. I broke my pelvis and 3 ribs. It was also during COVID, so I was admitted to the hospital and had loads of scans all throughout the day and night. Once they figured that I didn't need corrective surgery, they discharged me the following morning with morphine tablets and a wheelchair. I then came out of the hospital to around 100 messages from people that I barely knew wishing me well. My mom and stepdad had posted pictures of my wrecked car on Facebook and told everyone they knew about the accident and the specifics about my injuries. Now, at the time, I asked them to take down the posts as I did not want people knowing all about my personal life, but they never did so. Today, my friend told me that my mom has been sending messages into group chats telling people that I am pregnant and in the hospital. My stepdad also did the same thing for his family, and I have told them that my husband and I want to share the news ourselves. I told them that I was so hurt and disappointed that they have told people and also lied to me about it. I even pointed out the lie and told them that I had again received messages from others proving that they had lied to me. My mom then sent me a voice note of her crying, saying that she was sorry and that she didn't know what she was doing, that she must be the worst mother in the world, and that she's just so upset about Papa too. It was hard to hear that she was so upset, but I just reiterated that asking for privacy was not too much to ask. My stepdad, who I have been very close to, also sent me a voice note telling me that they don't need this kind of stress and to stop being so hateful over something so trivial. He told me that I was clearly hormonal, but that he will let it slide this time because I'm pregnant. He told me that my mom has cried for over 30 minutes and it's all my fault and that it's all over nothing. Also, that they told other people because they are worried about me. He said they will never apologize as they haven't done anything wrong. He also said that I'm the daughter that he never had and that he loves me, but he is so disappointed in my behavior. And here's the original message that started this sent to my mom. I said to her, "Sorry, it's just I've had messages from people today wishing me well in the hospital, so I know you've lied about who you have told about me being here. I am just so hurt and disappointed as I would have much preferred privacy. I don't feel like sharing anymore because I don't know who you're both sharing it with, and it has actually made me being in the hospital much more stressful. Now, I might be the jerk because we are all grieving and emotions are running high, but I also don't feel like they told other people in a malicious way, but instead just did it in a thoughtless way. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do?" I don't think you're the jerk at all for drawing boundaries out, especially with the way your stepdad was acting. Is he really trying to be like, "Oh, you're just hormonal right now because you're pregnant, but that's okay, I'll let it slide this time"? Like, seriously, what kind of passive-aggressive sexist comment is that? What a coward to say something like that when you're literally in the hospital. Oh, he's gonna let it slide? What would he do if he didn't let it slide? Like, what a ridiculous thing to say to somebody who is literally currently in the hospital. And in my opinion, I'm right there with the original poster. I wouldn't want my personal information out there, especially if I wasn't the one to first tell people about it. Like, I think what you're asking is completely reasonable in my opinion, and for your mom and stepdad to disrespect you in this way, in my opinion, is very toxic and incredibly thoughtless. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to Am I the Jerk if you haven't already, and also check out Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description. We love and appreciate you guys, and we will see you in the next video.